Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.
Chapter 1. MC's POV. As I finished reading the latest chapter of the manga, The Eminence in Shadow, all I could think about was how can a character be so weird, stupid, and likable at the same time. Don't get me wrong, I really like the character and think he's cool, but it's just frustrating watching him. As an assassin myself, a being who works in the dark, I really like the part of the whole secret second life thing he has going on. But not the whole mob thing. You can still live a really high-profile life and live a totally second life about being in the shadows without anyone finding out. Trust me, I would know, as apart from just being a famous assassin, I'm also a really high-profile movie star and no one knows of my assassination jobs. To everyone else, Ryan Martin and Azrael, the Angel of Death incarnate, are two whole different beings. When I was little, I was heavily neglected and would just spend my times in the streets just wandering around. Having nothing better to do, I just started to pick pockets and enjoyed the feeling of it until I was eventually caught. I was 14 years old when he got me, and during that time I had to mature early in order to take care of myself and not starve. I guess one thing I resent my parents for was not letting me enjoy what being a kid felt like. The being who caught me just so happened to be the most legendary assassin of his time, which by the way is a really big fucking coincidence. It was like 1 in a billion chance of that happening. When he saw me almost get away with his wallet, he just raised a brow and said that I had talent for being undetected. I just told him that when you're neglected you tend to blend in to not cause trouble, cause just as you're quickly neglected it can quickly turn into abuse. The old man just looked at me longer than normal and said, "You know, I was just looking to retire and train my next successor, and look at what God put in my way." Even though I didn't know it at the time, he came to be a very important figure in my life. He was someone I respected from the bottom of my heart. Although I did always found it funny that a being that deals with death for a living would be so religious as to mention God when we first met. The old man asked me if I wanted to be his successor, and me being the neglected kid that I was, fucking agreed like an idiot. I was pretty naive back then. Luckily he was genuine. Now that I think about it, I was fucking kidnapped, wasn't I? While thinking about the old man, all I remember was the lessons he taught me. Some of the lessons weren't even about being an assassin, they were just about life. Like the time I asked him why he was so religious. His answer was honestly quite shocking. He told me it was so he has something to believe in, that even if it was tiny he wanted to have faith in something and keep him grounded from losing himself in the art of killing and becoming a monster that only knows how to kill. I came to respect that, so I chose to believe in something too. Myself, I believed that I had the will to not go down such a road. And thanks to that I was trained into the perfect assassin until the old man unfortunately passed away. As a side effect, my acting became perfect thanks to his training. Although thanks to my neglectful self still wanting validation, I went into the movie industry and got the validation from the masses and fans. That wasn't the only thing that bastard of a old man taught me. I still remember when he threw me into a brothel when I just turned 18 to get immunity towards beauty and sex and not get distracted during missions. So as I was saying before, you don't need to be a background character to be the Eminence in the shadows, you just need power and a whole lot of skills. Now I know what you might be saying, what's a cool movie star assassin like you doing just reading manga, anime and novels of the sorts? Isn't that only for people that want an escape from reality and have a miserable life? And to that I tell you to fuck off, anime is for everyone. I still remembered when I encountered anime, it was for an infiltration mission and seducing a target. The only way to get closer to the target was to get into the hobbies they enjoyed, which just so happened to be anime. I had to spend hour upon hours to get closer to this target, but along the way the more I watched the more I enjoyed it. Until I became hooked and onto the downward spiral I went. Now as I was saying about Sid, it's fucking weird how everything just lines up for him. It's like Lady Luck gets on her knees just for him with how much things just works out for him with those million-dollar coincidences. Now that I think about it, maybe Lady Luck is a whore. Cause I had my fair shares of lucky situations like meeting the old man, which I still find it seriously suspicious, and then him just retiring and looking for a disciple at the right time. Now the reason for why I'm monologuing and talking about the latest chapter of the manga and about Sid. While waiting on a rooftop with a sniper in front of me waiting for my target, I decided to spend most of my time reading mangas I saw just updated. The last one I finished reading was the current chapter of Eminence in Shadow, and as I finished reading I got a notification on my burner phone where I take assassination missions. And the notification just so happened to be an email. And the main title for it was Reincarnation Interview. Looking at the title, all I could do was snicker slightly. How did they even get a hold of my burner phone and really a interview about being ice guy to another world like those lame fanfics? How funny. I thought while reading it, seeing that it would be a while before my target arrives, I decided to entertain the idea, seeing this as just an obvious joke. As I clicked on the link it presented, it took me to a website with a question in the middle of it with a next button next to the answer section. The first question was the most stereotypical question: if you were given the chance to be reincarnated into another world, where would you want to be reincarnated at? Having just finished reading Eminence in Shadow, I obviously chose it. I mean, come on, when you finish reading something the first thing that pops to mind is what would I do in this situation, so just having finished reading the latest chapter, my most obvious choice would be it. The next question was, which character from Eminence in Shadow would you want to be reincarnated as, and during what time period and condition? It wasn't that hard of a question, which caused me to monologue about the character and my life. Now back on the question, my choice would be obvious once again. It would be Sid Kagino. I mean, I could hit the random button, but there's a chance I would get reincarnated as a girl instead, so no thank you. Now about the time period, I chose the time when he was Minoru, his previous incarnation, as it would let me hone all my skills to the utmost limit and learn new ones. As for the condition, it would be to be able to know exactly when I'm supposed to die and be able to reincarnate once again as Sid. The next question was, if you could have the full skill set of any character, who would it be? While looking at this question, the answer was obvious: Sung Jin-woo. Who wouldn't want to be the Shadow Monarch? While looking further down, I notice a add-on section and it says I could choose something the character has, but it has to be something from the same character. So while thinking about it, I decided on the shadows he had when he got killed. He had about 1,000 of them, which in my opinion is a perfect starter amount. Well, that was short, I mumble, seeing that I already answered everything, and with that I hit send and tossed my phone to the side as I went back into the scope of my sniper. And as my target arrives, I fire my shot, killing him, completing another successful mission. And as I stood up while putting my sniper onto my shoulders, I suddenly get dizzy. Wah dash, I muttered as I start to fall face first, and as my face touches the floor of the roof, to the side I see my phone with the screen on, and in the middle was a check mark with the letters spelling out approved right under it. No way, were my last thoughts as I lost consciousness. Chapter 2. Omni POV. No way. Those were Ryan's last thoughts before he passed away, with his phone in his hands looking at the check mark in his phone spelling out approved. And as he passed away, his soul slowly drifted into space and into the light, where he woke up crying as a baby in the arms of a Japanese woman. And as Ryan struggled to control his new baby body, he hears somebody speak in Japanese. "Congratulations, madam, it's a healthy baby boy. Do you have a name ready for your new son?" The doctor asks Ryan's new mother. The mother, looking exhausted from the labor, just smiles while holding her baby and says, "Yes, me and my husband have decided to name him Minoru Kagan," while looking at her husband with a loving gaze. Now hearing that name, Ryan, whose name is now Minoru, starts laughing like crazy inside his head, as thanks to his previous jobs understands perfect Japanese. He 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 gig he 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 3 he hiri he 3 he hug 3 g 3 gig 4 g 3 g3 egg her he. But what came out was cute little baby giggles. The Japanese couple, hearing their baby start giggling when his name was mentioned, just smile back at him, unaware of this little gremlin's thoughts. "Aw, you see that, honey, it seems he really liked the name," the husband says while looking at his baby boy. "Whoa, baby, that's what I'm talking about. Looks like Lady Luck is on her knees for me tonight." That survey was real. Phew, I just had to get that out of the way. No matter how mature someone is or how trained I was, there was no way I wasn't going to celebrate being reincarnated, especially as future Sid, and knowing my future, it's definitely worth the celebration. It's even harder to go back towards my training in this new body. It's hard to control my emotions properly. Oh well, I guess I'll use what I got, and that's this new life as Minoru. I'll use it to study things I wasn't able to in my past life and make myself even smarter and more knowledgeable before dying once more and reincarnating into Sid. And with these thoughts he soon fell asleep in his mother's arms with a tiny smile on his face. MC POV. Before I knew it, 4 years has passed and I discovered some things about myself. My memories have become better. I somehow feel spiritually better. It's hard to explain it. My cognitive ability have all been upgraded, and it's either one of two things. 1, it's probably thanks to my age, since kids from an early age pick up things quicker and are able to grasp things better. I'm at the stage where things just seemed easy. Or 2, since I reincarnated, my soul probably absorbed the soul of who would have been the original Minoru and strengthened itself, making it stronger. If it's the second one, I'm not going to be like those wimpy reincarnated guys from those novels that get depressed about taking the body of someone. First of all, I'm an assassin, and second of all, his soul at the moment of my reincarnation was just a blank slate. A good analogy for it would be like ripping a piece of paper. If the paper had content on it, I would feel bad since it was the hard work of a person, but since the paper was empty, nobody is gonna cry over it. If that makes sense. Since my cognitive are at the all-time high, I decided to take advantage of it in case it is indeed the former reason. Now about the skill sets of Sung Jin-woo, it would seem like I still don't have access to them, which means I would have to die one more time in order to activate them. Probably for saying I wanted to reincarnate it as Sid, not Minoru. Oh well, I guess in the meantime I will just have to use this time to develop other skills I didn't get to explore previously. I started to show my interest in music, which my parents were elated about. Since in the original, Minoru's parent made him learn about music, they probably wanted a musically inclined child, which worked in my favor. Thanks to that, they hired a tutor for me, and when I showed my talent and quick learning to him, he really wanted to teach me. So thanks to the tutor I started learning many types of instruments. So thanks to that as well I went towards many music competitions and won them all. My music was just as good as the original composer if not better when I was 10, which quickly brought me fame, which I was already used to thanks to my previous life. Thanks to that fame many rich businessmen that held great extravagant parties and dinners would send a formal invitation so I could play at their parties. Even though it was an invitation I would still get paid millions of yens thanks to it. Seeing that I was already good with music I decided to focus on other things since I had no need for it anymore. One of the main things I focus on was martial arts. But I also focus on other things that would make me richer in another world like cooking and different types of culinary cuisines, which would be helpful if I wanted to open a big business empire in the future. The things I mostly focused on was about different types of alcohol, chocolate like how the original Sid did, sauces, spices, and the likes. I also dabble in fashion. As the leader of a future organization I need to appear presentable after all. After all the quote goes, the clothes makes the man. I know what you may be thinking, but Minoru, how are you able to learn so many things so fast in just that short amount of time? Surely there has to be a limit, right? It just seems illogical. The answer to that, my not so existing friends, is that 6 fucking years is a lot of time. Some of the things I talked about all I had to do was read and remember them, which thanks to my spiritual awakening was super easy, so no, it's not illogical. And so when I turned 10 I abandoned the music industry and focused mostly on martial arts for 5 more years. During those 5 years I studied many different types of martial arts: Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Tai Chi, kickboxing, karate, Kung Fu, Aikido, Judo, Kendo, Krav Maga, Wing Chun, Jeet Kune Do, Hapkido, Capoeira, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and ninjutsu, and many types of different weapons. And let me tell you, it hurts. I may be mentally strong, but I had to readjust my pain tolerance once again. Thinking about it, I'm going to have to redo this once again when I died. Fuck. Now then, thanks to reaching the age of 15 I realized that it was my soul that was strengthened. It wasn't thanks to my age that I was smart, which is a blessing in itself. Anyways, thanks to all the martial arts I learned, I started to create my own by taking the best part of each one of them and interconnecting them where they fit best at. Especially swordsmanship, which was one of the things I really focused on. Since I knew I was going to a world of sword and magic, I mostly practiced my swordsmanship, making it extremely deadly, elegant, and sharp. Can't forget about stylish as well, which would leave people in awe due to my swordsmanship. I guess being in the movie industry in my previous life has left me with the desire to show off and put on performances. And to learn all of these martial arts I would travel the world with all the money I earned from the music competitions and party invites, and meet different practitioners. I would then later fight them. During these fights I would then start copying them, which would shock them and start to teach me willingly. When I turned 15 my parents had to move to America for a job relocation. I didn't care much as I wasn't really that close with them. It's especially hard to do that when you're an adult mentally when you started. And since I am going to die, I don't really see the point of getting along with them. It's a waste of time and would just make them grieve even harder when it happens, which would just seem cruel. I'm an assassin, not a monster. I then went to Japan to last the rest of my years there. I decided to go for the school the original Minoru went to, Sakurazaka Senior High. The reason is simple, it's for Akane Nishino, and no, it's not for lustful reasons. One of the many things the old man taught me was how to control my lust. One of the many reasons why so many assassins failed their mission or were killed during it was because they couldn't control themselves and gave in into lust. Though I wouldn't mind building a harem in a near future. This desire mostly comes from not really having any meaningful relationships except from the old man. So no, the reason wasn't lust, it's cause she can be of use especially when this world goes to shit. And so I went and enrolled in school where people started to recognize me but left me alone due to my presence, which I controlled to give out a don't want to be bothered kind of feeling, which people found weird. During my high school time I mostly kept to myself, once again not finding any reason to interact with anyone, and spent the rest of my time studying things about business and what could be of any help. And that went on until I finally turned 17 and my next seat neighbor then turned to be Akane Nishino. That was when I realized that I have just entered the final months of my life. 3. Chapter 3. Omni POV. While Minoru was just looking down in his book at the moment reading and studying about business, his classmate next to him Akane Nishino called out to him. "Hey Kajino-kun, you dropped your printout," she said while handing him back the piece of paper he purposely dropped. "Oh, that I did, thanks Nishimura-san," Minoru said, getting her name wrong on purpose. At this point it was like he was reading a script by the way things were going. And good thing he was an actor in his past life. With his acting and the script already presented in his memories, it was go time. "Ni Nishimura," Akane said with a smiling ticked-off expression. She then corrected him. "Kajino-kun, my name is Nishino. We've been classmates for 3 months now, would you remember my name already?" Minoru in a monotone voice just says, "Of course I remember you. Not only are you a popular actress, you're also the daughter of a billionaire. I would never forget someone I played to before." Hearing this she got confused. "Huh, what do you mean?" "When I was little and still doing music, a lot of rich businessmen would pay a lot of money for me to play at their parties, especially birthday parties. Your father just so happens to be one of them. It was good money for your birthday party when you were little." I have a really good memory but I just can't be bothered to remember everyone I come across. Anyway, sorry for getting your name wrong, Nishitani-san, Minoru said once again in a monotone voice. It's Nishino. She expressed irritated. And how can I forget, it was one of the best birthday party I ever had and it was thanks to your music, she thought while sighing. Well still, thanks for picking up my printout, Nishimura-sa. Minoru continued. Now it's back to the first one. She yelled. She then covered her mouth with her hands and with a nervous expression said, that was a mistake, forget about the outburst just now, Keijino-kun. Thanks to her outburst she decided to stay quiet for the rest of the day. Due to being an actress she mostly tries to keep a good image of herself out to the public. And so the day passes and school is over for the day, everyone is going home except Akane Nishino. She just keeps looking at her phone with a nervous expression. Just why won't he pick up the phone? It's getting dark, I'll have to leave by myself, which is something I would really like to avoid, Akane thought to herself while still trying to get in contact with her driver. Seeing the time, Akane knew that she had to walk alone in the dark by herself, something she really didn't want to do due to being kidnapped before and due to her previous controversy she had, which left her with bit of a mental scar. Standing up from her desk she just sighed before getting her bag as well. She then started walking out of the school and into the direction of her house. And as she started going home she kept getting this feeling that someone was watching her but she couldn't pinpoint it, and with that she kept walking home while looking over her shoulder every few minutes. Until she heard a footstep behind her causing her to gasp in surprise before turning around. Seeing no one there she breathed a sigh of relief and turned around to continue on her route home, but unfortunately bumped into a tall man. She staggered back slightly and looks up at the man. The man in question was just gave off an intimidating presence before saying, Akane Nishino, I presume. Akane quickly just turned around and started running, but she didn't make it far as a white van soon appeared blocking her way. As the van opens, a blonde-haired guy comes out of it and started grabbing her. Stop, let me go please dash. She then started to beg but was cut short by the blonde-haired guy covering her mouth with a chloroformed rag. Come on, stop struggling, the blonde guy says while still covering her mouth, but Akane didn't listen and continues to struggle, and just when she was about to lose consciousness, out of the corner of her eyes she saw Minoru standing there with a nonchalant expression, and with that she finally lost consciousness. POV change, Minoru's POV. Seeing Akane being taken away on the van, I just disappeared from the streets and parkour my way into the top of the houses in the area. Watching the van from a distance I just start to follow it, jumping buildings to buildings until they stopped in front of a warehouse. Seeing that they arrived at their destination, I decided to change out of my uniform and into clothes I always carry in my bag. Image of his outfit. Once down I made my way to the top of the warehouse and watched what was happening below with a cold expression on my face, although one couldn't tell due to the mask I was wearing. The only thing that appeared were my eyes. As Akane woke up she started looking around and saw that she was tied up. She then started to try and wiggle herself out of her bindings. The blonde guy who was sitting down just started laughing while watching her. He, you know you shouldn't do that, he said before standing up and continues speaking. The daughter of the head of the Nishino Zaibatsu, wandering the streets at night. You might get caught by some unsavory characters. The other guy with him, which was a retired military soldier I believe, interrupted. Just stay there, and don't try anything. We sent a ransom note. As soon as we get the money, you're free to go. The blonde guy then added, it looks like your father made a lot of enemies. The military soldier just told him to shut it and stop talking like a gangster. Which led to the two bickering for a while. They stop bickering and the blonde-haired guy turns to Akane and says, man, and today was supposed to be a good day for me and now it's ruined. Why don't you make me feel better? He then slowly reaches over to Akane and says, why don't we start with a little bit of fan service? Let's start with that little mouth of yours. He finishes off by grabbing her face. Akane, feeling his hands on her face, squeals slightly in disgust and turns her head away, shaking his hand away. The blonde guy, slightly more angry, just says, don't you dare fight me, slaps as he slaps her. I'll wait just a little bit for him to get a little bit more handsy to make Akane fall just slightly into despair, so for when I save her, her gratitude would be even larger, I thought while watching the scene. And as I watched him reach his hands to grab her I thought to myself, you know, what the hell am I doing? If I want someone to be loyal to me I don't need such a cheap tricks that may leave her with even greater mental scars in the future. And with that I kick the window frame of the skylight, and as I do the whole thing shatters and starts to fall to the ground with me on top of it, and as it falls and lands dust started flying everywhere. Everyone else in the warehouse stops what they're doing. The blonde guy that was about to touch Akane stops his hands halfway and sighs before standing up and turning around to face me, and when the dust settles down he says, who the hell are you, bastard? Can't you see I was just about to have some fun? TSK. Name's Azrael, that's all you need to know. And with that I bend down and pick up a shard of glass. While I was bending over the blonde guy came running towards me while winding up his fist trying to punch me. I then threw the glass shard hitting him on his knees, and as the shard goes inside his knees he falls to the ground screaming in pain in front of me. Arg, you son of a bitch. I then hear rapid footsteps behind me. I tilt my head to the side while still looking at the guy in the ground screaming. An arm then holding a knife swings past me, missing me by an inch. When the arm with the knife was over my shoulder I grabbed it with both hands and threw the guy with an over-shoulder throw onto the guy on the ground. When they made contact the blonde guy on the ground was knocked unconscious due to the impact while the military guy was just grunting on top of him. while I still had a hold of his arm with the knife. I started to then twist his arm, making him drop the knife and scream out in even more pain. "Arghhhh, please stop, you're going to break my arm," the military guy pleaded. I just looked straight into his eyes. Crack. "Arrrrhggggggghhhhhhhh." He let out a blood-curdling scream while still being on top of his partner. I let go of his arm, which was now in a weird shape, and sent a kick right to his chin, shutting him up and knocking him unconscious, which sent him flying off his partner and skidding along the floor. I then bent down to pick up the knife. While I was bending over, I reached over and grabbed the glass shard that was still lodged into the guy's knee and pulled it out without any mercy, which caused the blonde guy to wake up once again and start screaming. "Arg, please, I'm begging you, make it stop." Already used to the sound of people begging for mercy, I didn't even bat an eye as I stood up and threw the glass shard once again, but this time I threw it right in his pelvis and into his reproductive organ. The guy couldn't even scream as he passed out again due to the overbearing pain, while Akane, who was watching everything, flinches and closes her eyes, turning her head away to not look at such a gory scene. And as I start walking towards her, she probably heard my footsteps as she slowly turns her head to my direction once again and slowly opens her eyes. When she saw me walking toward her in a slowly manner with a knife in hand and blood flowing behind me, it most likely scared her as she shut her eyes once again and tried to shuffle backwards in a fast manner. When she opened her eyes again, she saw that I wasn't there. I made my presence known behind her, and as I'm untying her with the knife, I say, "You gotta stop getting kidnapped. This is like the second time I stopped it. I'm not always going to be there." Hearing me, she then goes wide-eyed and said, "You're the guy that helped me with the stalker." Omni POV. Akane, hearing Minoru, was shocked and said, "You're the guy that helped me with the stalker." He sounds the same as before, it's really him, but his voice sounds really familiar, and as Akane continues to look at Minoru more deeply, she can't make out any of his features except his eyes. "They're really familiar, like I seen them recently," she thought while keeping her gaze on his eyes. Once he was done untying her, he threw the knife at the military guy's lower region, which caused him to scream out in pain and start losing blood rapidly. When Akane looked over to the screaming guy, Minoru slowly made his presence as little as possible and escapes from her view, leaving her alone in the warehouse, where she proceeded to call her father to help her pick her up. Chapter 4. Minoru's POV. The next day came, and thanks to the previous event, Akane started trying to speak to me more throughout the day. Once the day finished, I decided to check out the forest that was near the school at night, where there's barely anybody. I just got to find a boulder that's not far from the streets where cars pass around, and that should be the place the original Minoru was banging his head trying to see real magic, which would also be close to the place where he got ran over. I found the place after an hour of looking for it, and what I found was quite shocking. Thanks to my upgraded soul, my spatial awareness has been heightened, which means my ability to detect things has also increased. So when I arrived, it was quite the shock to feel something just floating around the area quite casually. And when I reached out my hands to touch what I was feeling, nothing impressive happened. Although I couldn't see nothing, I just know something was there, and I have a feeling it's magic. And so I sat down and got into a meditative position and tried to move the mana in the air around. They would shake for a little bit, but then they would continue to do what they were doing. Seeing them shaking, I knew that I was getting somewhere, so I kept trying and trying until morning came. When morning came, I was still sitting around trying to move the mana particles, but as time went on, I started getting much more successful. It would seem like my strengthened soul really was a blessing in disguise due to how many times it has helped me. Like right now, in order to move mana, intent is what it uses, which is hard to express outward. I have a theory based on what I know about how the magic in that world works. It's all about intent and how well you manipulate it. It's easier to control mana when it's inside of you or with something you're in contact with. That's why it would dissipate when it's outside or farther away from the user. Since you can't express your intent outward or when it's really far away, it's your intent that keeps it together. That's why I say that having a strengthened soul is a blessing. With a strong soul, I'm able to extend that intent outwards with a bit of ease, making it easy to manipulate mana. And the more you practice, the easier it is to express your intent, which is why Epsilon was such a master at mana control. Due to her constantly expressing her intent to mana, it became easier and easier until she could do without much effort. Due to this revelation, I continued to practice every day for a week. And then it happened. I got a buzzing type of feeling going inside my head, indicating me that it's time and I should when. Words weren't even expressed, all of it was just a feeling. The mana around the area all started to flow to one specific direction in an extremely fast motion. Seeing this, I knew exactly what it meant. My time has come. So I started running after it, and once I made it to the street, a truck was just driving along. Seeing the truck, all I thought was about the memes in my previous life. Truck-kun, take me. Author's note: that sounded so sexual, lol. Omni POV. As the truck was driving along the road, a boy soon appeared running in front of it. The driver, seeing the boy, then honked the horn to warn him. Honk honk. The truck driver then tried to avoid him, but it was too late, and the boy, who is clearly Minoru, got sent flying, which also caused the truck driver to crash, although he made it out okay with a few injuries. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said about Minoru. Minoru was then pronounced dead on impact. But that wasn't the end of him. When he gained consciousness, all he saw was darkness and felt a wet sensation all around him. It seems my mental capabilities are strong enough to stay conscious when I'm inside my new mother's belly being. It was a weird feeling for Minoru being conscious during these particular moment. Apart from feeling bored, he felt himself growing stronger and stronger as the months passed by. It seems my body is being constructed to being able to hold the power of the Shadow Monarch. I could feel it near my chest, a bundle of energy being formed. I see, so my black heart is being formed. Nice, Minoru thought. And as time passed, all of Sung Jin-woo's skills were being implanted onto the very being of Minoru, fully becoming skills that truly belonged to him now. And with that, 9 months quickly passed. All the water that surrounded his baby body suddenly popped and flowed downwards, which was quickly followed by tight squeezing, signifying the start of his new birth. After a while, Minoru saw a white light and was pushed towards, which prompted him to close his eyes. When he then opened up his eyes, he was in the arms of a beautiful black-haired woman looking at him with a worry expression. To the side of the woman, what greeted him was a shiny bald head also looking at him with worry. The mother then turned to the maid that helped deliver the baby and expressed her worry. Aren't babies supposed to cry? Why isn't it crying? Is something wrong with him? Minoru, who is now named Sid, understood what was going on and started to fake crying to try and calm his new mother. Monotone baby crying. Hearing him cry, everyone present let out a sigh of relief. The woman who helped with the deliver then said, "It looks like there's nothing wrong with your baby, madam. Sometimes it takes a while for babies to let out any sound, it's not always immediate. Congratulations once again with your healthy baby boy." The door to the room slammed open as 2-year-old Claire came running with her little legs to her mother's side, trying to get a better look at her new baby brother. What everyone failed to notice, however, was the hundred upon hundreds of eyes just glowing in the shadows. And the shadows all just had one thought: our master and majesty is born once again. 5. Chapter 5. Sid's POV. Seeing everything was alright after I started fake crying, I decided to sleep to not have to deal with everyone fawning over me, which is super annoying when you're a baby. I then woke up the next day. The first thought that occurred to me was incomprehensible noise. Rifjaksk, I'm the freaking Shadow Monarch, bitches. And once again the only sound that came out of me were happy baby giggles. For some reason I'm strangely energized, more than I would have been. Since I already experienced what it was like being a baby, I know that I'm not supposed to feel this much energy, and I can already guess what is the cause. Though I still wanted to get a good look inside myself to see what it's like. Then something weird happened. I was able to get a really good look at what my insides looks like. Before, when I would try this, I would just get a vague feeling of what it looks like. Now that I get a full picture, I can't help but wonder if it's because of all the magic power I currently possess that it was easier and I was able to get a clearer view. When I looked inside myself, I saw something that made me giddy all over again. I have a black heart, and I'm not talking about the "I'm evil" kind. My heart is quite literally black with a bit of purple light around it. It's one thing knowing you have something, and it's another thing seeing it with your actual eyes. Well, I didn't see it with my eyes, I saw it with my sense, but it still counts. And that's not the only thing I have. I can feel it, hundreds upon hundreds of beings connected to myself. Due to the excitement, my baby self just couldn't stop laughing, so much so that my baby face at this point is getting red. The door to the room then opens and my new mother comes over the crib I was staying at and picks me up, and as she's holding me she says with a smile, "Well, aren't you a happy little fella?" She then tickles my stomach slightly, which causes me to start giggling even more due to how sensitive I am at the moment. After that little moment, she sits down nearby and lowers her blouse and presents her chest to me. "Come to Papa," I thought to myself with both tiny arms stretched out. Suck, 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 suck. When I was sucking away, I started to feel multiple stares under me. Knowing what it was, I started to get embarrassed. They just saw their monarch doing something so embarrassing. Ugh, I'm gonna die from embarrassment. And I can't push it down cause I'm still not in full control of my body. I then just closed my eyes and pretended that those stares weren't there and continued sucking away. When I finished, my new mother just put me down on my crib and left the room. Seeing nothing better to do, I just start practicing my new moves, which I feel are a part of me now. When I try to use them, I mostly used instinct and it comes all natural to me. The first thing I did was try out ruler's authority with the toys in the crib, and when trying it out, the toys started to give out a purple outline and started floating slightly. It was unexpectedly easy due to my instincts guiding me on how to do it, and while letting it float about, I was perfecting my mana control, which will be quite useful. And so a week passes and I just keep trying to perfect my control over my magic power through my mana circuits, which I was able to locate. In order to enhance themselves, people would let their magic power flow from their circuits and into the specific body part they wanted to enhance. That was something I found out after rechecking my body over and over again. Seeing that a week has passed, I thought that it was finally time for me to meet the beings connected to me, and so I waited until everyone was asleep in the night, and through the connection I contacted my favorite shadow soldier Jin-woo had. "Come forth, Baru." And with that, the shadows near the crib started to extend slightly outward, and out from under it came a giant bipedal ant. And as the ant, who is named Baru, came out, he suddenly and unexpectedly dropped on all four and started to bawl his eyes out, crying, "Why, my liege, you called me first, you wanted to see me first, and for that I couldn't be more thankful. Why, I sighed through the connection, "Baru, you have to lower your voice or someone going to come and see you, and I'd have to return you from where you came from and call out someone quieter." Hearing this, Baru just got quieter and lowered his head, but continued to cry tears of joy silently. And through the connection I said, "Pick me up." Surprisingly, he was very gentle while picking me up, which was weird. And as he picked me up, he was still crying. if he could cry any harder I think he would. Take me to the forest nearby, I said through while using the stealth skill I got from Jinwoo, which completely eliminated my physical and magical presence. While still holding me, Beru escapes from the mansion and takes me into the middle of the forest. Once there I started to surround myself with ruler's authority and start hovering slightly, and while hovering I summoned all my shadow soldiers. My shadow underneath then extended almost covering the whole forest. Thankfully it was nighttime and no one was around, or they would have been very frightened by such display of power. And once extended, beings started coming out of my shadow like beings from hell. They all then prostrate themselves to me while swearing their allegiance, and as they did they then spoke at the same time saying, "We welcome back our liege and master back to the land of the living, may his reign hold strong." Seeing this just brought a smile on my tiny baby face, and through the link I replied, "Thank you, for your encouragement." I then continued floating while looking at all of the soldiers kneeling down to me. Oh, this is so going to get in my head and make me become arrogant, and I'm all for it. These mongrels won't know what hit them, I thought while bringing my inner Gilgamesh out at the end. Chapter 6. Sid's POV. 3 years soon passed. Thanks to the black heart I currently possess, my body kept getting nourished by the mana of it, making my looks all the better. It was making my skin and hair glossier and smoother. Even though I was 3 years old, you can just tell I'm going to become better looking than Sid was originally going to be. For most of my time for the last 3 years I just kept magically enhancing my body, making it permanently stronger and much more durable, which made me able to start exercising much earlier than any toddler ever should. I guess that's the beauty of magic, it makes the impossibility a reality. I've been thinking a lot about what to do next with magic, thinking a lot about different animes and mangas from my other past lives, and the more I thought about it the more ideas kept coming to mind. For example, since this is technically an anime and manga world, who says specific types of techniques from different animes, manga, and novels won't work in this world? Right now in the middle of the night I'm in an open field about to test out if anime moves work in this world. For starters, the most simple ones to test out would be the 6 powers of the Marines, also known as the Rokushiki techniques from One Piece. The first move I tried was what I believe to be the easiest to execute, Soru, or also known as Shave. Since I'm in an open field I don't have to worry about running into a wall if I mess it up. The premise of Soru is to kick off the ground at least 10 times in the blink of an eye, which would allow the users to move at extremely high speeds in order to avoid attacks, as well as to attack at higher speeds and with greater power. Since I was just 3 years old my speed wasn't up to standard when trying to perform such moves, so I had to magically enhance myself to actually be able to do it. Although it was difficult I now knew that I could do it, which makes the possibility for more power endless, but I'm not going for a lot of different powers. Too many power at some point would just become redundant. After all, like Bruce Lee once said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And so that's what I'll do. Seeing that anime martial arts were possible, I decided to try on a technique from the magical side of entertainment. I sat down in the grass in the open field with my legs crossed and started to concentrate on the magic power around and inside of me. I then drew in all of the magic power towards the center of my abdomen and started to shape it into a sphere. Once the sphere was made, it felt like it still didn't belong to me just yet, like it's inside of me but I can't have access to it. By now it was just a pure clear sphere made out of magic. I then tried to recall the things I knew about the mana core from the novel, the beginning after the end. Even though I stopped reading it around the 400th chapter due to the many annoying POV switches, it was still a good read. A mana core is classified into 6 colors: black, red, orange, yellow, silver, and white. One's mana color starts off as black, due to the body's blood and other impurities mixed with the mana particles as they form together into a mana core. Each stage of the mana core colors is split into 3 shades: dark, solid, and light. Except silver, which is split into initial, mid and high, and white core, which does not have stages. In general, the lighter the mana core color, the purer one's mana core was. Therefore, there was more power one could have access to. Author's note, straight from the wiki page. So I was missing my blood to make it officially mine, I thought to myself. Sighing, I just put my hands inside my shadow and pull out a blob of slime, and as I was holding it in my hand I started to pour magic power into it and changed the shape from a blob into a sword. With the sword now in my hand I made it sharp and positioned it to my other hand and made a cut in the middle. Since I knew slime was going to be an important material, I had my shadow soldiers gather them up, but instead of killing them right away I put them in the sub-dimension of my shadow and turned a part of it into a breeding ground for slimes. Once the cut was made I returned the slime sword back into my shadow. I then lifted my shirt and put the palm with my blood at the very center of my abdomen and used magic power to push the blood inside and into the crystal clear orb. Once my blood and the crystal orb made contact, a type of mana explosion happened, creating a crater with me in the center due to the formation of my mana core. When I checked the core again, I noticed that instead of it being clear it was now a dark red color. Seeing this just put a smile on my face. It looks like it's going to be much easier to manipulate mana once it leaves my body and core. Wanting to test out my mana core, I then stood up from the crater and stretched my hand slightly. I then used the magic in my magic core and started using the red mana particles inside of it, and as I used it I started to shape it into a fireball. The fire being used then turned purple, which made the fireball purple as well, and once it was made I launched it into the sky. It flew for a few meters before dissipating into the air and turning back into magic power. I see, so once the magic power from the outside goes inside the core it turns into elemental mana particles, and once it's used it reverts back to magic power. Quite interesting. And since my magic power is a purple color, the elements turns into that specific color as well. I then tried to summon the other 3 elements to see if I would have some type of limitations, and upon calling the wind, ground, and water, I discovered that they were mostly the color black with a slight purple accent, but apart from that nothing seems to be amiss. I would have to continue to purify my core to see if I discover anything new. So for now the only thing I could do is practice the Rokushiki techniques and purify my mana core. Author's note: I'm having a hard time deciding should Claire join Shadow Garden after she gets kidnapped or just continue keeping her in the dark for now. 7. Chapter 7. Sid's POV. And just like that 2 years passes and I'm now 5 years old. I'm back in the open field and in front of me is Igris with a sword in his hand while I have my slime-made sword in mine. We just continued staring at each other as all the other shadows are out and encircling us. Are you ready, Igris? I asked, excited about finally able to face him. Igris just nods even though he's still worried about hurting me. Ever since I could walk I would try and face Igris to test my swordsmanship against him, but Igris would decline, expressing his worry that I'm too small and could get hurt if I'm not careful. It wasn't until I finally turned 5 that Igris finally caved in, which is why I'm now in front of him with my sword ready. I take a deep breath and position my sword slightly and use Soru. I disappeared from where I was standing and reappeared in front of Igris with our swords clashing into each other creating sparks, and as Igris pushed the sword I was sent skidding slightly. I got in position again and used Soru once again, but instead of a slash I sent thrusts multiple times which he managed to block with the flat side of his lightning blade. While still thrusting my blade I started to use Jeppo, which allows users to push themselves off the air itself with superhumanly strong kicks, allowing them to travel through and remain in midair for an extended period of time. It was kinda like I was flying while kicking the air. And while kicking the air I turned my thrusts back into slashes which Igris was still able to block. Wanting to at least get a hit in a used Soru in the air while also using Jeppo, so it was hard to detect me, but since I wasn't at my strongest since I was still a child, Igris was still able to follow me with his eyes even though his eyes were moving at a quick speed. While still trying to confuse him I decided to use a move I have been working on since I found out I could use other anime moves and started practicing the Rokushiki. My eyes suddenly gave off a red glint as I saw 1 second into the future, where I attacked Igris and how he managed to block it. Using that to my advantage I did as I did in the vision but slightly altered the course near the end, and as I was about to hit Igris, he managed to grab my arm and flung me across the land, which I managed to land back on my feet. Seeing that the fight was over, bearers started clapping extremely fast. Bravo my liege, bravo, you are just getting used to your new body and you almost managed to hit Igris, bravo. Igris just started nodding as he said, well done sire, that was done splendidly. The rest of my shadows watching the fight just started nodding as agreeing that I'm getting better at fighting, which I am, obviously. Especially after finally getting haki throughout the years of practice. Since I knew my spirituality is more advanced thanks to my reincarnation, I knew that getting haki was just a matter of time, so during the night I would go into the forest and shut off most of my senses and just wear a blindfold. I would then get my shadow soldiers to spread around the forest and attack me at random intervals, which was quick and painful since once again I had to readjust my pain tolerance. Both Conkers and Armament haki are a bit tougher to learn than observation, especially since I'm still in a child's body. So that's what I mostly focus on for the last 2 years. Even after 2 years all I managed to get was 1 second into advanced observation haki. That's what I mostly focus on, even though it was mostly during the night time that I would go practice. It would have been weird to explain to my sister what I was doing walking around like an idiot with a blindfold on. Should I do that? I thought to myself. I mean, it would be cool and I would later be known as the blind swordsman who had one of his senses cut off just to enhance the other. As I thought more into this, the more crazy ideas I kept coming up with. I could do it like Gojo, from Jujutsu Kaisen, and just come up with something like my eyes have a special property, that they need to be sealed or else it would be catastrophic. I could go totally chunny with this and make someone accidentally take off my blindfold. And once it comes off I could just grab my eye and release a huge amount of magic power saying, "You, what have you done?" while still covering my eyes. Should I do it or not? Oh well, I still got 10 years to decide. When I finished with my contemplating, one of the shadows I left with Claire informed me that she was about to sneak into my room once again, and so with a quick thought I made all my shadow soldiers return and slowly sank into my own shadow. I then appeared right next to my bed, and as I appeared the door handles jiggle slightly, which made me go inside the covers quickly. And as I made it inside the covers the door slightly opens and 7-year-old Claire comes and sneaks in while closing the door softly to not notify anyone. And as she closed it she scurries along and climbed inside my bed and under my cover. She without whispering just said, "Open your eyes, I know you're not asleep." I sighed before opening my eyes. "You caught me sneaking out one time, can you just let it go already?" "I haven't done it since," I said lying through my teeths. She came in the room when I was about to jump out the window to test out my flying skills. Which by this time I know it was a rookie mistake. I wasn't expecting someone to come in my room, so I wasn't actively searching for anyone. And it's annoying to have your detection skills on all the time, even in your own home. Which by now I learned to always have it on, even to my own discomfort, thanks to Claire. "You're my little brother, it's my job to take care of you whether you like it or not," she said, pouting. I just gave her a deadpan look. "You do know I'm stronger than you, right? You still haven't won any sparring sessions against me." She just continues to pout. "Doesn't matter, I'm still your older sister, so that means you are my responsibility." She then paused before tears started gathering in her eyes. "What if something happens to you when I'm not there? Yes, you are stronger, but you're too reckless for your own good." And with that she just comes closer and hugs me tighter. I can't say it doesn't make me feel fuzzy inside when she says things like this. I mean, come on, anyone would, I thought to myself while also sighing. As an only child in both past lives, I can't say I didn't always wonder what it's like to have a sibling. Can't say I hate it, I thought to myself, fully enjoying the hug and soon falling asleep as well. I don't remember what Igris calls Jinwoo, so I'ma just go with sire. You can correct me if I'm wrong though. 8. Chapter 8. I'm sorry to say, but this chapter is kinda an info dump. I have to do it here now, so when I'm referencing something about a power I don't have to stop the scene of the story midway and provide the information, while you can just have it here now and make it somewhat relevant to what the MC is practicing. You have been warned. Enjoy. Sid's POV. Waking up the next day, Claire was still hanging on to me while she slept, which prompted me to shake her awake. "Come on Claire, wake up, it's already morning." Seeing that she wasn't waking up, I just sighed before conjuring a small water ball using magic, which I then proceeded to throw at the sleeping Claire. Splash. "WHA, what the hell, Sid?" Claire said, waking up drenched. Seeing her woken up, I just got up from the bed and started running away from her. I quickly closed the door behind me to give me time to escape from her wrath. I only managed to get a few feet ahead before, boom. I turn back and see the door flying and hitting the wall, and Claire with one foot up, and as she lowers it she starts walking out of the room slowly as her wet hair clings to her face. Seeing her, I started running even faster. I then felt Claire's magic power spike and felt her presence running after me, which caused me to run even faster. As I ran away from her, I exited the house and went into the training yard, where I went and picked up a wooden sword and waited for her outside as well. As she came running outside, she saw me waiting for her with a wooden sword in hand, so she continued running to where the swords were displayed and picked one up in one quick motion without stopping, and now with a wooden sword in hand she came running straight at me. Seeing her coming towards me with an angered expression, I just gave her a teasing smirk as I got into a fighting position waiting for her to get closer. And as she got close enough, she swung her sword while coming towards, and as she got close I just stepped to the side and put out my foot, tripping her, causing her to face plant into the ground. And as she got up, you can see her face covered with dirt and her expression growing angrier as she tightened her grip on her sword. Seeing this, I just sigh and said, "Don't use anger when you're fighting, always maintain a calm mindset. Some opponents will try to taunt you and make you angrier, making you lose focus, like what happened just now. Since you were so angry you didn't notice my foot sticking out, which caused you to fall. In a real fight you could have lost your life in such a situation. Get up, let's continue." Ever since I was allowed to wield a sword in this life, all I mostly done is try and teach Claire, since I had nothing better to do in the mornings. Claire, hearing my instructions, just clicked her tongue in annoyance before replying, "TSK, stop trying to act like you know everything." She then got into a fighting position as her face grew serious and more determined. "I'll beat you, I'll show you why I'm the older sister," and with that she enhanced herself with magic and charged at me once again, but this time much more focused. I responded in kind and charged at her myself, where we met at the middle, and as we collided the sound of metal hitting each reverberated across the training field. We just kept pushing against each other, trying to overpower the other. I moved my sword slightly, redirecting her sword and thrusting forward, leaving a scratch on her cheek. We both then moved back slightly and started attacking each other again. Slash after slash, I just kept overpowering Claire until she started getting used to the force of my attacks, which caused her to improve just slightly. We continued this sparring sessions until the late afternoon, where we had to stop due to Claire having too many scratches on her body and face. Any more and it would have done more harm than good. Which was then followed by a bath, which was later followed by dinner, which was later followed going to bed, and followed by Claire coming into my room and falling asleep as soon as she got into my bed. Looks like my plan to exhaust her completely until she just falls asleep worked. Now I don't have to worry about her when sneaking out. And with that I snuck out again towards my destinated spot in the forest. Once there I sat down cross-legged and looked at my mana core, which now was at the light red stage, about to break through any moment now. Ever since I formed the mana core, I started to learn the mana rotation technique with a bit of modifications to it. Basically, mana rotation is the ability to be able to continuously absorb mana from the atmosphere while moving or in combat. Now for the modification which I made was that instead of just absorbing magic from the atmosphere, I would also absorb it from my body and black heart. It took a while to find the right amount of mana I can absorb from my own body without causing me to almost faint due to magic exhaustion. When I mean body, I meant my mana circuits, which were constructs of which serves as a bridge between the physical world and the soul. It is usually present within everything which has a soul associated to it, and is half physical, half ethereal. It is also integral for any magic to occur. And so I spent the 2 years passively absorbing mana into my core, making it light red about to break into dark orange. To give myself a boost to make it to the dark orange stage, I took a massive amount of mana from my black heart and mana pathways and I started to purify my mana in my core quicker. Crack. And with that I have officially broken through, though it did leave me a bit lightheaded though to the absence of mana from my circuits. One benefit I gained though through constant absorption from my mana circuits was a very quick recovery speed and faster magic power flow inside of them, making them activate quicker as well. Now thanks to the dark orange stage of my mana core, my mana control has gotten better, my mana pool is now larger, the casting speed of my spells has also improved, and the damage output of my spells have gotten bigger. Another benefit of being able to have a self-created mana core is the elements you can control having a higher version of itself. For example, the fire element's higher version of itself is lightning, the one for water is ice, earth's is gravity, and wind is sound. So due to being in a different world, the laws of this world works differently than the world of Tibet. Although the principle of the mana core is the same, the way it works and what elements you can manipulate is completely different. Instead of a specific species only able to have control of a few said elements, everyone has access to all the elements. It all just depends on control. If your control over mana is low, you won't ever get a chance to use a higher property of mana, just the basic elements or the ones you're more comfortable with. Another thing I discovered is that instead of it just being 4 elements, there is 2 other elements, light and shadow/darkness. The light element has a healing factor and the darkness element has a corrosive factor, which can both be turned off by the user's will. What I'm mostly trying to find out is if these 2 elements have a higher property like the others. After a while of testing different things, I found out they do have different elements. It's probably due to my black heart's influence, but the 2 advanced elements for light and darkness is life and death. Now that I have broken through, I stood up from my sitting position and summoned icicles behind my back with mana and shoot at the trees in front of me. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. All the icicles then get skewered inside the trees, and as they lodge inside, the trees start turning into ice as well, but only around the part where it was shot at. I see, so it can't freeze the whole tree just yet. Just from that, I then walk up to it, and as I'm in front of it I sent out a straight jab right towards a frozen part of a tree. Shatter. Seeing this I just shrugged before speaking out loud, I can work with this. As the tree I punched falls to the ground. Thud. At first I was wondering if I should just give the future girls some specific elements. But then I said fuck it, so I'm plugging my ears to any complaints. Now for the future of the FIC, I'm going to have trouble in the business aspect of it, so for future reference bear with me, I'm not smart. 9. Chapter 9. Omni POV. 1 whole year has passed since Sid has broken through the orange stage of his mana core. Now he's in the light orange stage and is facing against Tusk, who is holding the Orb of Avarice. The reason for this is since Tusk is the most magical orientated shadow soldier in Sid's possession, he's the perfect opponent to test out his magic skills. And with that, Sid has gotten Tusk to agree to fight him, and now they both stand face to face. Sid then surrounded himself with lightning both inside and outside, further enhancing his speed and reaction time. A streak of lighting and the ground caving in was all that was left as soon as Sid rushed towards Tusk. Tusk, seeing his little master coming, just held the orb that further enhanced his magic and said, "Hymn of Protection." As soon as those words left his mouth, he was soon surrounded by a protective barrier. And as soon as the barrier was conjured, the sound of thunder was soon followed, which was produced by Sid's fist making contact with the barrier. And as they collided, a gust of wind soon spread due to the force of the collision. To some of Sid's weaker shadows it just looked like Sid surrounded himself in electricity, which was quickly followed by thunder. Seeing their master being the main cause for such an event, they just cheered with their hands in the air. Tusk, seeing his master make contact with the barrier, said, "Hymn of Slumber," which then started draining Sid of his stamina. Sid, feeling his stamina draining, just backed away. He then stuck out his hand slightly and conjured 3 large drills from the ground and started to make them spin. Due to the speed of the spinning, the black drills started turning bright red, showing just how fast it was turning. He then launched them towards Tusk, and as they made contact with the barrier it just shattered. Tink. Shatter. And as the drills made it through the barrier, 2 landed on the shoulders of Tusk, while the last one made its way through his stomach, leaving a hole which you can see through. Using mana from Black Heart, Tusk's body soon regenerated to peak condition like nothing ever happened. Tusk, using the Orb of Avarice, just started using his gravity magic, making it hard for his opponent to move. It was to the point where Sid was on his hands and knees. Sid then tried to use a bit of his own gravity, making it lighter for himself. Thanks to his own gravity magic he was able to get back up, but just slightly, as Sid was still slouched over from the pressure of Tusk's gravity magic. Tusk, while still holding the orb, just said, "Hymn of the Blazing Fire," and as those words came out of his mouth, the space around him started to get surrounded by fireballs, which were quickly thrown towards Sid in a quick motion. Sid was just standing there while looking at the fireball approaching. Tusk, who saw his monarch just standing there, got a worry expression seeing him doing nothing. His worry soon increased as he saw the fireball making contact with Sid. Boom 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 boom. As the multiple fireballs made contact, a large amount of dust soon covered the area. And as the dust cleared, Sid's form can be seen flickering on and off until it disappeared completely. The original Sid soon appeared right in front of Tusk with a wind-made sword. And with a victorious expression, Sid swung his sword, cleaving Tusk's head off. Sid, seeing his victory, just turned to the other shadows and smiled with an index finger swiping his nose, and with a cheeky expression said, "Light projections for the win." Seeing their monarch come out victorious from the sparring sessions, the place was then filled with boisterous cheers from everyone, even from Tusk, who was back together once again. Whoa, 1000 plus. Some were even shouting, "That's our liege." And just like that, the night soon passed and it was morning. The first thing Claire did as soon as she saw Sid was drag him outside. She then gave him a sword and started marching in front of him. "As your older sister, it's my duty to teach some stuff as well, so today we're going bandit hunting in the forest," she said while holding her sword upward. She then continued, "Swordsmanship is best learned through combat experience." The bald eye was blabbering about it while indulging in dandyism. He was talking about the Scarface bandits that have been lurking in the forest recently. "And we're going to defeat them, but worry not, little brother, big sis is here for you." She then soon started bragging as we got inside the forest. "Everybody was talking about how easily I could beat your everyday bandit since I won the Young Knights competition. You only won cause I didn't want to participate," Sid said with a deadpan expression, which caused Claire to pout. While she was pouting towards Sid's direction, she did not noticing the bandit that snuck right behind her. And as the Scarface bandit was behind her, it spoke, "Huh, why are there brats here?" Sid and Claire were both surrounded the rest of the bandits that came out. "What? Are they lost or something?" Another bandit soon responded, "And there's 2 of them, I bet we can make a killing with them." Hearing them, Claire gains a cold look on her face. Ever since she started sparring with Sid, she has learned to always keep a calm mindset in such situations. She didn't even let Scarface continue talking and attacked him right away, pushing him back slightly. Scarface, seeing this, just gained a slightly surprised expression. "Well, aren't you well taught? Capturing you just might be a bit of fun." He then turned to the rest of the bandits. "While I take care of this little brat, capture the other one." Claire, hearing this, just got angrier, but with gritted teeth asked, "Can you handle yourself, Sid?" Sid, while watching the entire interaction, just had a bored expression on his face and just nodded, but then he realized Claire couldn't see him as she was still watching her opponent, so he just said, "Although you couldn't see it, I nodded." Claire, hearing him, just nodded back and rushed towards Scarface and started to attack him, which caused Scarface to retaliate and attack Claire back with the same intensity. Slash after slash, both of them kept getting injured until Claire pushed Scarface's sword out of the way and sent a final slash right across his chest, causing him to fall face forward and into the ground. Seeing her opponent defeated, Claire gained a proud expression and turned back to help Sid out, but what she saw left her speechless. All the bandits were just in a pile on top of each other with their necks slit wide open, and Sid sitting in the middle of it with his hands on his knees and his head slightly down, waiting for Claire to finish. She then waved to Sid and with a face full of a large bright smile said, "Look, Sid, I did it. I'm strong enough to actually take a bandit all on my own." She just continued waving and smiling, looking at her brother, hoping to see a proud expression on his face. But what she saw was just his face with a disappointed look while shaking his head and sighing. She then gained a confused expression, and as she was about to express her confusion, she felt a great pain shot through her from her back, causing her to scream in pain. "Urgh." And as the pain appeared, she soon started losing consciousness, and as she was falling, she managed to get a look at the figure who caused her such pain. It was Scarface. He faked his death to get Claire to lower her guard and attack at the right moment. Seeing her down and out, he slowly turned to Sid, who was looking at him with an emotionless expression while sitting on the piles of bodies. Scarface opened his mouth to speak but was quickly shut down as Sid slowly lifted his pointer finger at him. As the words were about to leave his mouth, Sid's finger turned into a light purple color and shot right through the middle of his head, killing him in one shot. Sid then slowly got up from his supposed throne of dead bodies and made his way to Claire, and as he arrived he knelt down slightly and started to heal all of her wounds. He then got up slowly and looked around the place, which was quickly followed by him slowly lifting his palm up a little, and his eyes then glowed a deep purple color devoid of emotions, and with an emotionless voice he said, "Come forth and serve." And as those words left his mouth, the shadows of the dead bodies soon started to shake as beings made entirely out of shadows came forth and knelt down in one knee as soon as they saw their now monarch. 10. Chapter 10. Boo! Surprise chapter. Omni POV. Sid, seeing them kneeling before him, gains a small smile on his face and recall his new shadow soldiers into his shadow. He then picks up Claire from the ground and puts her on his back as he gives her a piggyback ride, but instead of leaving the forest, the first thing Sid did was look around the camp of the bandits. He kept looking for any valuables until he came across a chest filled with zennies. 1 zenny in this world is the equivalent to 1 yen in Japan. So Sid was quite pleased to find 170 gold coins in the chest. 1 gold coin in this world is worth 100,000 zennies, so imagine a chest with 170 of those coins. The total would be 17 million zennies in total. Sid slowly pulled the chest into his shadow, keeping it safe there, and started walking out of the forest with Claire on his back. Claire then woke up with a bit of a daze and asked, "What happened?" while shaking her head slightly to get rid of it. "You let your guard down, that's what happened. If I wasn't there with you, you could have gotten killed or worse, sold off as a slave." Claire, hearing her little brother reprimanding her, gained a downcast expression and put her forehead by his shoulder. Sid, feeling his sister's mood, just sighed before saying, "Sigh, if this was a duel between knights you would have won, I guess, so there's that." Claire just smiled at her little brother when he tried to cheer her up and wrapped her arms fully around his neck. She then moved her head, giving him a kiss on the cheek, and positioned her head on top of his, not even bothering to get off him. Sid, feeling the kiss on his cheek, just smiled slightly before going back to reprimanding her. "I hope this taught you a lesson, since this wasn't a night duel it still meant you could have died due to your carelessness. You have to remember bandits have no honor. They're extremely cunning because of it. The moment they became bandits was the moment they threw away that honor they once had, so they would use every trick in the book in order to win. Do I make myself clear, Missy? Claire, while still hugging her brother from behind, just hummed, saying she was listening. And while Claire was hugging her brother she thought back to the scene of him sitting on the pile of bodies. Just how strong are you, Sid? I wasn't even fighting the scar-faced bandit for a long time and you already defeated all the other bandits. She then thought of the look her brother was giving her, the look of pure disappointment. While biting her lips she thought to herself, never again. I won't let him look at me with such a look ever again. I'll be strong. I'll become strong enough that the next time he looks at me it would be with a proud look. He will be proud of the strength I gained and how far I come. Ever since that day Claire kept to her promise and started training harder than ever. It was to the point where Sid had to stop her from overtraining herself. And with that 2 whole years passed. Sid was seen flying in the night sky with his shadow outfit that was made out of slime. Apart from the outfit, Sid made 2 angel-like wings also made out of slime to maneuver in the air much better. He continued flying about until he ran across a bandit camp similar to the one his sister found when they were smaller, but this time it was in the middle of an abandoned town. And without much thinking Sid tucked in his wings and dived straight into the ground. Boom. Dust soon flew everywhere. He then spread his wings, showing an imposing figure. As soon as he landed all the bandits came out of their camp wondering who was causing such a commotion. It wasn't only the bandits who went to look at who made such a commotion. A little girl who had her mouth, legs, and arms tied soon crawled her way to take a peek of what was happening through the opening of the door where she was held. And what she saw left her in awe. Sid using the wings made all the dust fly away, leaving him in the middle of the crater he created. He then held out his palm as the wings on his back started to detach itself and fly into his hand, transforming into a long sword. Sid without much thinking just covered his sword with armament haki and sent a flying sword slash towards the bandits that started to surround him. The slash wasn't even made out of magic, it was purely made out of his physical strength and expert swordsmanship. The slash just cut apart anything it made contact with. Every human was soon bisected in half. Seeing some managed to escape the slash, Sid took a step forward as he disappeared from everyone's view. He then appeared in front of a bandit and swiped his sword downward in a beautiful arc. He took another step and disappeared once again, appearing in front of another bandit, repeating the same movement with grace and beauty. And when he was finished he just swiped his sword, clearing it of any blood left in the blade. And with that all the leftover bandits soon gained a straight line from the top of their head to the bottom of their crotch, perfectly symmetrical. Which was quickly followed by them being spilt in half and blood flowing everywhere. Feeling the presence of a kid near a building he made his way towards it. And as he made his way his eyes gained a bright purple hue as he said, "Come forth and serve." Which caused all the shadows of the bandits to appear before him and go inside his shadow, increasing his ever-growing army. And when he opened the door to the building all he saw a blonde little girl tied up looking at him with stars in her little eyes. Sid just smiled slightly as he bent down and untied the girl, setting her free. He then turned around to walk away but was stopped by the little girl who grabbed his long coat and said, "Wait mister, who are you?" Sid just smiled at her as he held his sword forward and made it jump on his back and turn back into black angel wings. He then spread his wings and said, "You can just call me Azrael." And with that he flapped his wings and got out of there, since he already collected all the treasure the bandits collected while he was untying the girl, who was known as Rose. 11, Chapter 11. Okay, I can't really find out when Sid saved Yukime, but it's said that the stylish bandit slayer saved her from getting killed by her fiancé, so Sid was still using that persona, which means he still hasn't met Alpha. Which means he still hasn't become Shadow, which is why he saves Yukime when he's 9, something I made up. This is for any future questions about Sid and what he did before he officially became Shadow. Omni POV. Ever since Sid has gotten money from bandit hunting with Claire when he was 6 years old, he grew to enjoy it and would sometimes go and hunt them just to see his stacks of coins grow. And 3 years later, as it kept growing, Sid had accumulated 100,000 gold coins, which if you convert everything is 10 billion zennies. Just from hunting bandits alone and keeping all their gold coins and not wasting a single coin for 3 years. When Sid finished counting all the coins he couldn't believe just how much money he had. He even had to question himself how the original Sid was so poor and desperate for money that he willingly turned himself into a princess's dog. It's been a year since Sid has saved Rose, and during the year Sid has been trying to master his usage of armament haki. Sid can be seen standing in front of tree with his fist close to his chest and his eyes closed, concentrating on his haki's flow. He guided the haki to his fist and punched the tree, and as his fist made contact the tree exploded outward instead of caving in and breaking. Seeing the trees in pieces, Sid just looked at his fist and thought, "So this is Ryu, awesome," and just as he finished his practice he noticed smoke in the distance. Seeing the smoke, Sid just put on his slime suit on and made his way towards it. Meanwhile in the village, you can see a bunch of beastmen running around and killing all the dire wolves and spirit foxes. Fox and wolf, man and women, young or old, can be seen running around for their lives, but they didn't make it far as a beastman soldier from a neighboring clan soon appeared, killing everyone in their way. Get-Tan and Yukime can be seen crouching down all bloody and dirty. Get-Tan was seen holding his bleeding arms with gritted teeth and cursed, "Damn it. Damn it all. If only I had been stronger I would have been able to protect everyone, to protect our village. Get-tan lowered his head slightly. I'm really sorry. All I could do was take you away and run away. Yukame then tried to comfort Get-tan. You don't need to apologize, Get-tan. The only one to blame are the army and soldiers who attacked us. We had no chance against these numbers. Which just made Get-tan snap. Shut up. If I had more power, I wouldn't have lost anything. I would have been able to protect it all. Get-tan then stood up slowly as he had a hand over his eye. Yukame then softly asked, Get-tan. Which prompted Get-tan to say, sorry but please understand, Yukame. It's a fact that we lack strength. Get-tan then took a bottle of pills and held it in front of Yukame, and as he held it he started yelling once again. That's why I suggested that everyone take this medicine to gain immense power. If we gain the cult's protection we will be able to make it through any strife. Yukame backing away in confusion started asking, medicine? Cult? What are you even talking about? But Get-tan didn't even bother to answer and just continued shouting it's all her fault. She rejected the medicine so everyone followed her. But don't worry, that won't happen again. Because I've already murdered her. I snuck in the chaos and sent her head flying. But you're a smart one. So I'm sure you'll understand, right? That was the only way to protect you. Seeing her backing away, Get-tan just grabbed her shoulder and tried to forcefully feed her the red pills, and with a crazed look he said, now, take it. Let's avenge our village together. We'll kill every single one of them. Yukame just pushed Get-tan off of her and shout, and oh enough. Stay away from me. Yukame then quickly turned around and started running as fast as she could out of there. Get-tan just crouched down and picked up his katana and said, so you're making the same mistake as your mother then, huh? So you're also rejecting this power. As Get-tan yelled he swung his sword towards Yukame's back, which caused blood to splash everywhere. And as he kept slashing at her back he kept saying, if you don't want anything robbed from you, you have to rob from others. Why can't you understand this? Yukame was then on the ground begging him to stop until she heard a voice from the sky. Well, what do we have here? This isn't a very gentleman thing to do, hurting a beautiful lady like this. And with that Yukame lost consciousness. The first thing Sid did was kick Get-tan off of Yukame. He then looked around and saw that everyone from the village was murdered, which prompted him to gain a cold expression. He then called out to his newly acquired shadow soldiers, you guys been training with Igris inside my shadow dimension for a while now, it's time to show me what you've learned. Shadows of all the bandits he killed over the year then spawned all over the battlefield and rushed to the army of Beastman and started attacking them, killing everyone their liege and Monarch sees as an enemy. Get-tan seeing this just gained a scared look and went to grab the bottle he dropped when Sid kicked him, but was stopped by Sid's foot that came stomping into his hand. Argh! Sid didn't even pay any attention to his screaming and gathered Haki on his feet. He then used internal destruction when he proceeded to kick Get-tan on the stomach, destroying a chunk of it from inside. Author's note, from now on anytime Sid is dressed in a disguise Imma call him by the name of his disguise, like right now he's dressed as Azrael, so Imma name him Azrael. Azrael then made a sword out the slime and slashed it right across his eyes, blinding him, and he proceeded to turn the sword into gloves and grab onto the screaming Get-tan and ripped off his eyeballs, which caused him to scream even louder. Azrael then grabbed him by the collar of what he was wearing and threw him across the field far away, letting him escape, and as he threw him Azrael said out loud, I would kill you, but that isn't my job and this isn't my revenge story, it's hers, and looked at Yukame's direction as he slowly made his way towards her. He lowered his hands onto her scarred back and started healing it, except the long scar across her entire back. He decided to leave that on as a memento for now and a reminder to get her revenge, to motivate her and become strong like she's supposed to become. He then shook her awake, will wake up, which made her shot open her eyes in a quick manner, and as she did she jumped back in fright and looked around in a frantic manner looking for any danger, until she laid her eyes on Azrael, which caused her instincts to go wild. I'm going to die, I'm going to die, these thoughts kept repeating over and over in her head as her instinct told her only one thing, death. However, before she could run away he called out to her, wait, I mean no harm, he said with his hands slightly raised. As you're the only survivor I thought I should help you out. With a bit of apprehension she then responded, and why should I believe you? I was already betrayed. Who says you won't take advantage of me? The more she spoke the more teary-eyed she got. Azrael just sighed and nodded while saying, you shouldn't believe me, you're right, it's good to always be cautious about everything, especially when you're weak, but you really don't have a choice but to take my help. If I hadn't finished off all of the invading beastkins I'm pretty sure you would have been caught as a war slave. Hearing that he finished off all the beastkins she slowly looked around the area and what she saw shocked her. All the buildings were mostly destroyed while beings made out of shadow impaled soldiers on the ground with their swords. And while looking around her eyes narrowed in dread as she started running while sniffing the air. She then arrived near a destroyed building and started to push away all the debris, and as she pushed everything out of the way she dropped to her knees and hugged the body she found dead. It was the body of her mother. Why mother, please wake up. She then hugged the body tighter and whispered please. After a while she let out a bestial roar into the sky, which was accompanied by an outward explosion of magic due to her distress. While hugging her mother she roared, I'll never forgive you, Get-tan. Azrael then appeared behind her and put a hand on her shoulder to calm her down and somewhat comfort her. Which worked. Why don't we give her a proper resting place so we can talk, Azrael said while looking down at the body of Yukame's mother. Yukame then nodded sadly and picked her mother's body and took it to the top of a hill overlooking the destroyed town. Azrael then used his earth magic to make a proper coffin for her, and when he did, Yukame just looked at him in disbelief, not expecting him to be able to possess such abilities and manipulate the earth like that. After getting over her initial shock, she laid her mother's body down in the casket. Manipulating the earth once again, Azrael closed it, and as it closed it he sunk it into the ground and put up a tombstone that said, "Yukame's mother rest in peace." He then manipulated the elements of water, earth, and life to make beautiful flowers to show his respect for the dead and put it on top of the place she was resting. Yukame, while looking at the tomb, just looked at him and with a bit of suspicion said, "How do you know my name? We never introduced ourselves." "Ah shit," Azrael thought, and with a bit of quick thinking he said, "When the dire wolf beastkin was about to finish you off, he said your name before I stopped him." Yukame found the scenario of such a thing likely and nodded her head, accepting his story. "Since you're the only one left alive." He then looked around the entire village with cold eyes which started glowing a bright purple color and said, "Come forth and serve." And with that, every beast man and women shadow started to come to live and drop to one knee, showing their respect to their now monarch and liege. Sid just let the kids and old rest in peace, not even bothering to call them forth. 12, Chapter 12. Omni POV. Since you're the only one left alive, it's going to be tough for you to even get started on finding a place to live. So how about I invest in you and we can plan out your future, Azrael said to Yukame, who was sitting down near her mother's grave and looking over her burnt village. Yukame just nodded, feeling lost on what to do next since she doesn't have any money or residence, since her whole village is destroyed. The shadow soldiers then came marching from the village with a bag over their shoulder, and as they marched they made their way towards Azrael, dropping the bag by his feet and kneeled down while looking up towards him for praises. Azrael, seeing them, just rolled his eyes at their exaggeration and said, "Good work, hey," which caused the shadow soldier to beam in happiness. And with that they went inside his shadow, happy at being praised by their monarch. Yukame, seeing all this happened, just stood there in shock. Just who is this being? And how strong is he truly to possess such unearthly abilities that are out of this world? While looking up at him she asked hesitantly, "Just who are you?" While still looking at the village he answered, "You can just call me Azrael, and that's all you need to know. The time is not right for you to know anything else." Azrael then looked at the bag in front of him and said, "This is for you. In there is all the zennies in the village. There should be more than 1,000,000 zennies in the bag. It should help you out when you need it." Yukame then looked at him in surprise. "Are you seriously giving all of this to me?" "Why? Like I said, it's an investment. I might need your help in the future. As for what to do with all that money, you could go to the lawless city and buy a building and buy some girls, turn it into a brothel and make even more money. You don't even need to be a prostitute yourself, you could just get other girls to sell their bodies and you could be paid for it." Yukame just continued looking at the money on the floor, and the more she thought about it the more she liked the idea and decided to agree. "And while the other girls make money for you, you could spend the rest of the time training yourself so you could get your revenge on the dire wolf beastkin," Azrael said, pointing Yukame towards the profession she was going to have if Azrael didn't intervene. And as Azrael finished speaking to Yukame she just looked at him wide-eyed. "He's still alive. I didn't kill him so you could get your revenge on him in the future, that's why I left that scar on your back as a reminder. I'll fully heal it when you accomplish your revenge." Yukame, hearing him, then gained a determined expression and expressed her thanks. "Thank you for letting it be me that gets to kill him in the future." Azrael then said, "Come forth, Scarface." A being made out of shadows and a face with a large cross-shaped scar by its eyes then appeared from underneath Azrael in a kneeling position awaiting for his orders. Azrael then pointed towards Yukame, "Protect her until she finds a place where she can safely store her money and a place to stay." Scarface nodded as he then stood up and grabbed the bags full of coins and sunk into her shadow. Yukame then looked at her shadow in fascination while looking at the purple eyes looking at her from inside it. And as she stood up from her mother's grave she gave Azrael a deep bow, expression her thanks. "Thank you for giving me such an opportunity. I'll do everything in my power to make it up to you." Azrael just nodded and sent her towards the direction of the lawless city. While looking at her disappear into the distance, Azrael then looked back towards the village and started walking towards it. And with cold eyes which started glowing a bright purple color he said, "Come forth and serve." And as he took a step forward as he uttered those words, beastkins made entirely out of shadows started to come to life. A three-tailed fox also appeared behind him and looked towards Yukame's direction. The three-tailed fox beastkin then knelt down behind him expressing her thanks. While all the shadows in the village just expressed their servitude. Azrael didn't even bother to call forth the children and elderly into the mix of shadows in order to let them rest in peace as they had no use for him. He then called all the shadows into his own shadow except the three-tailed fox woman beastkin. He then turned towards her direction and saw her standing straight and said to her, "Since your daughter's name is Yukame, I shall name you Yukihim." As soon as Azrael named her Yukihim, then grew another tail behind her back enhancing her strength, making her a four-tailed fox. Yukihim then bowed down expressing her gratitude once again with a soft smile and got pulled into his shadow. Azrael then looked towards the lawless city's direction with a pondering expression before summoning Kaisel beneath himself. Kaisel whipped its long neck into the sky and let out a roar signifying that it's about to take off, and with a flap of his wings he took off into the sky going into the direction his monarch directed. 13, Chapter 13. Omni POV. Sid is now officially 10 years old and right now he's standing in front of a boulder with his sister right next to him with a boulder of her own. Sid was just standing there while looking at his boulder and after a while he just puts a hand on his sword that hangs to his hips. And as he put a hand on his sword he takes it off. Everyone from the staff of the manor who came to watch just looked at me in confusion until the builder was then split into pieces in perfectly shaped cubes. Everyone who watched it just looked at it in a way and started clapping. While when Claire got a hold of her sword she kept swinging it in a really fast motion that was impossible for any normal eyes to follow. All people saw her arms moving but not her sword, all they saw was blur. And as she finished she put the sword back in the scabbard and as she did so the boulder just sliced into pieces. Seeing this the staff clapped again even though it wasn't as cool as Sid's, it was still phenomenal to watch. Everyone just had one thought in mind, as expected of the Kajina siblings. Due to how good both of Sid and Claire are with the sword they were then dubbed the Kajina siblings, which in Sid's opinion it's a bad moniker. As the staff went away from watching their little show, Sid and Claire just stay in the training field while looking at each other with their swords in their hands. Claire then uses Soru and disappears and reappeared in front of Sid, but to Sid all he saw was Claire running at him in slow motion. He uses a Soru of his own and reappears in front of Claire as their swords clash, which causes sparks to fly everywhere due to the collision. Their hands along with their swords can be seen moving at a speed at which normal eyes couldn't possibly follow. Although their hands and sword were moving they just kept staring each other in the eyes, not looking anywhere else. Until Sid thrusted his swords to create a cut on her arm, but as it made contact the cut wasn't made, it was like slash at something made out of metal. Seeing this, instead of being surprised he just smiled at her for using Tekai. Tekai is one of the 6 techniques he taught Claire when asked him how he has gotten so strong. Tekai is the ability to harden the user's muscles to the level of iron, allowing them to withstand and effectively nullify any damage they might have taken from attacks. Tekai can also be used to enhance the user's attacks by the increased density one gets from using it. Sid just increases the speed of his attacks and its power, which eventually actually manages to cut Claire. Feeling herself being cut, the only thing she could do is click her tongue in annoyance and continue attacking while still looking deep into her brother's eyes, which were just displaying pure confidence in his skills, and he has every reason to be for the most part. Since Sid was born into this world all he did was train and even more training. Even his mana core was at the high silver color stage, and that's how he spent most of the day today, just fighting Claire until she could barely move her arms. When Sid was done it was already night time and he was quite excited since he heard a bunch of bandits have decided to take residence nearby. He would finally get a chance to have his first living subordinate in all 3 of his life. So with a plan in mind he decided to suit up and look his very best, already playing the scenario in his head and how it would go. All he could think about was on how to put on a good show and performance like he did in his past life. And with that he made his way into the forest where the bandits were staying and party. Lights, cameras, and action. The first thing he did when he arrived was active his dragon fear and bloodlust towards all the bandits, making them go to the ground gasping for air while fearing for their lives. And as they were gasping for air they heard the sound of slow heavy footstep appearing from the distance. With one step at a time the Shadow Monarch appeared with his head held high and purple glowing eyes looking down on everything. He didn't even bother to look at the bandits on floor that were starting to get lightheaded from the wheezing for air they were making. With slow steady steps he made it to a giant box with a white sheet covering it. He didn't even bother to touch it and just used ruler's authority and moved the sheet out of the way. What appeared before him was a pile of flesh that was just overloading with magic. He just made a crushing motion with his hands as the door to the cage got crushed due to the force of ruler's authority. After opening the cage the Shadow Monarch just aimed his hands forward as it gained a green hue and started to heal the pile of flesh. And with a flash of light what appeared was a naked beautiful elven girl with long golden hair just flowing by her back. The elven girl just started blinking in rapid motion to get used to the light, and when she opened them she saw a being looking down at her while lowering his hand that was glowing slightly green. She then looked around her body in amazement. She then softly stuttered in a cute voice, "BB, but how? My body was almost completely rotten and it turned back. I don't even know how I could express my gratitude. I'll devote my entire life repaying you." And as she finished speaking the Shadow Monarch turned his back towards her, and as he did he summoned a throne using his shadow magic and sat on it. He then positioned himself in a lazy manner with a leg over the arm rest while leaning his head on his hand in the other side of the arm rest. He then looked towards the elven girl and said, "Does that mean you would be this monarch's follower?" She then gained a confused expression. He just continued looking at her. He then says, "I have decided, from now on your name shall be Alpha and you'll be my follower and work for me. And our goal is to prevent the resurrection of the demon Diabolos." The elven girl whose name is now Alpha gains a nervous expression. "The demon, Diabolos. The one from the fairy tales?" The monarch just slowly nodded as he then explains, "Yes, long ago the world was at risk of being destroyed by the demon Diabolos. However, 3 heroes representing human, elves, and beastkin defeated the demon. That's how the story goes. But what people don't know is that it really did happen. However, that's not the end of it. With his dying breath, Diabolos unleashed a curse on the heroes. A curse that would be passed down to their descendants as well. The curse of Diabolos, or simply, possession, is the name of the illness that was gnawing away at your body. Which means possession is proof of being a hero's descendant. In those times, they would have been revered and held in high regard. Alpha hearing this just covered her mouth in shock. You must be kidding. Instead of being revered, we're suffering from prosecution. Sid using his light-based projections to just conjured images of kids in his hands being respected, which later changed into a kids being thrown out and mistreated. He then continued his explanation. Someone rewrote history to make it so, they covered it up so they could erase anyone who carries the hero's blood. The Diabolos cult, the ones scheming to revive Diabolos, those are the enemies we face. The cult never makes a move in the open. They erase those who stand in their way from the shadows. He then stands up from his throne and says, but they aren't the only ones who can use just tactics. How can I call myself the Shadow Monarch and let such atrocities happen in the place that I rule? As the ruler of the shadows, it is my job to make sure such things are taken care of. He then takes off his hood and extends a hand towards Alpha. We are Shadow Garden, we lurk in the shadow and we hunt in the shadows. Preventing the resurrection of a demon is now easy task, but unless we succeed the world is fated to perish. Won't you help us? And as he says this, his shadow started to expand as multiple beings made purely out of shadows stand tall behind him with imposing figures. Alpha, seeing his power, just stared in awe and gains a fanatical light in her eyes. Alpha then gained a determined expression and drops on one knee and bows with a hand on her heart, and while lowering her head she says, the Diabolos cult. If their influence even allows them to falsify history, they must hold immense power. Like me, many others are forsaken to die because the truth is hidden. That can't be allowed to continue. I understand everything. I shall put my life in the line then. For Shadow Garden. And for the Shadow Monarch. She then slowly lifts her head and continues where she left off, and bring upon these sinners the death they deserve. The Shadow Monarch then just nods his head and lowers his arms, and as he did so he controls his shadow to envelope her figure, and as he controls his shadow to return, Alpha is now dressed in her signature slime suit. Alpha just looks over herself in a way, and when she finishes she saw her new master just walking away ahead, which prompted her to quickly follow close behind. And as she follows she notices the bandits on their knees just looking at them with great fear. She then asks, what are you going to do with these bandits, my lord? Sid then turns to Alpha and said with a smile, when I'm showing my face you can call me Sid, and as for the bandits they're nothing to worry about. And with that Sid's eyes glowed a bright purple and clenched his hands into a fist. Suddenly all the heads of the bandits just bursts exploding everywhere. He then continues walking ahead, and as he walked her just said, come forth and serve, and the shadow of the dead then came back to life and knelt down with a hand on their supposed heart, which was quickly followed by them sinking into the shadows and moving into his. Alpha's eyes seeing this just grows wide, as expected of the Lord I now serve. And with that they leave the forest with Alpha skipping along behind Sid. 14, Chapter 14, Omni POV. It has been 2 weeks since the creation of Shadow Garden and Alpha joining. She can be seen in a field in the middle of the day wearing a slime suit, wielding a sword made out of slime, standing in front of Sid, who had a sword made out of slime as well. Sid didn't even use any technique, he just used his strength to propel himself towards Alpha. Alpha barely had any time to react as she gathered magic at the bottom of her feet, causing her to be blasted forwards towards Sid with her sword raised ready to strike him. Sid just lazily parried it, pushing her back, and swung his sword at her torso, slicing a bit of her suit, exposing her stomach. Alpha with a bit of magic manipulated the slime suit to fix it. She then gathered more magic at the bottom of her feet to give herself an even bigger boost and pushed herself towards Sid at a faster speed. Sid saw Alpha's sword coming towards him in a horizontal angle, and he just leaned backwards in order to dodge it. Once it was past his head he turned his sword into gauntlets and punched Alpha in the stomach, knocking the air out of her and sending her flying and skidding and rolling across the ground. Once Alpha managed to stop herself she just started coughing while holding her stomach on all fours with her sword on the floor. Sid just sighed while looking at her and said, I told you be more creative when using the slime sword. One of its main ability it literally to be able to change its shape. All you have used is a sword. I know that that's what you are most comfortable with, but you sometimes gotta leave your comfort zone in order to grow stronger. Alpha just got up from the ground while holding her sword and put on a serious expression and ran towards Sid once again. And with that they spent the afternoon training until it was getting dark. Sid just put a hand over her head as he healed her, and while he was healing her Alpha said, Master, while I was out investigating in the morning I overheard a lot of people talking about a group of bandits trying to sell a demon-possessed slave, and they're leaving in the morning tomorrow after resting in the forest for the night. Sid then nodded as he took his hands off her head once he was finished healing her. He then covered himself with his shadow, and once he dispelled it he was seen wearing his slime suit with his hood up completely covering his face. He then turned towards Alpha and said, well, what are you waiting for? We have a few bandits to catch. Alpha just smiled as she morphed a ball of slime from gloves into a magician's mask that covered a bit of her eyes and said, I'm ready, master. Sid then pulled Alpha closer into his chest, which caused her to blush slightly, and with that he summoned Kaisel from under him and flew into the sky. While in the air Sid asked, do you know which direction they are at? Alpha while holding on to him then nodded, yes master. She then pointed north and said, they are in that direction. I spent the entire morning searching for them. It was a bit difficult but I managed to do it. Alpha then looked in Sid's as if wanting to be praised for her hard work. Sid seeing her just scoffed slightly with a smile on his lips and patted her head, good work. And after flying around for a few minutes Sid spots a campfire with bandits surrounding it and drinking away their worries. Sid didn't even hesitate as he pushed Alpha off Kaisel. Alpha, feeling being pushed, just turned towards Sid as she looked at him in shock as she fell off Kaisel. She then turned around while falling and started to flap her arms with a panic expression, trying to fly. "WWWAAHHHHHH, Master, you're so cruel," Alpha shouted while she continued falling while flapping her arms. She then proceeded to close her eyes tightly and tried to morph the slime on her back. All she got was a mismatched pair of disfigured wings. The bandits who were just drinking away just heard a shout and looked upwards toward the sky. The main leader of the bandits then stood up in shock. "What the hell is that thing?" he said as he saw the thing falling down grow abnormal-looking wings. And when she got close to the floor, the wings made one big flap, killing off all the momentum it had while falling. Alpha, once killing off all of her momentum, returned her suit to how it once was and rolled on the ground due to landing weirdly and got herself adjusted. Without even thinking, Alpha used her burst step and appeared in front of the bandit leader who was standing up. Due to his shock expression, he wasn't able to react fast enough as Alpha made a sword out of slime and decapitated him, causing blood to splash everywhere while his head flew off his neck. The other bandits then jumped in shock and took out their sword as they ran towards Alpha while screaming, "Boss!" Alpha, seeing that they were surrounding her, just closed her eyes and made spikes appeared all over her suit. She then spread her arms as she made the spikes fly off in every direction, causing some of the bandits close to her to die due to them being impaled in the head by the spikes. Seeing them stop advancing towards her, Alpha gathered more slime she has stored and made a sword as she blasted off into the other bandits. Some tried to take a swing at her, but she managed to parry most of them, and some did make contact with her, but it didn't make it far due to her increasing the durability of the area of the strike. After each swing of her sword, the bandits would either lose a limb or be killed. This kept going on until there were no more bandits left. When she was done, she was standing in the middle of limbs, bodies, and blood everywhere. She was with both her hands on her knees, panting with one eye closed due to the exhaustion. While letting her guard down, a bandit pushed a body off of him and stood behind Alpha and with a sinister smile swung his sword downward. And just as his sword was about to make contact, Iron, one of Sid's shadows, appeared from her shadow and blocked the sword with his shield. Roar! Iron then let out a battle cry as he swung his axe with his other hand, splitting the bandit in half. Alpha, who turned around, just looked at this in amazement. So cool, she thought, totally in awe while looking at her master's summons. Sid then started walking towards her with Kaisel walking right behind him, and as he walked towards her he just shook his head and said, "Seriously, what is up with you girls and not always making sure your opponents stay dead?" Alpha then got embarrassed and bowed down towards him. "Sorry master, it won't happen again, and thank you for saving me." Sid once again just shook his head. "Don't thank me, thank Iron," he said while patting Iron's arm. Alpha then nodded and bowed towards Iron and said, "Thank you for saving my life." Iron then grew bashful as he rubbed the back of his head. Sid just smiled while looking at him. He then turned his head to the carriage that was off to the side, where he detected a sign of weak life and made his way towards it. Chapter 15, Omni POV. Sid then calmly walked towards the carriage and opened the flaps to get a look inside. With one look inside, he saw a body with black markings all over it, just a few days away from completely turning into a corpse. Sid just sighed before reaching out his hand to fix the magic overload the body was experiencing. However, before he could get started, Alpha appeared right behind him with Iron following closely behind. She pulled softly on the long coat of the suit to grab his attention. Shyly she asked, "Could you teach me how to do it? I want to be able to help them as well." Sid just smiled and said sure, and so with the use of ruler's authority he pulled the body out of the cart and held it in front of him. He then grabbed Alpha's hand, which made her cheeks gain a red coloring, showing she was embarrassed. While holding her hand, he guided her magic to slowly fix the body that was suffering from the curse. Slowly but surely the blackened part of its skin started disappearing until what stood floating in the air was a beautiful white-haired elf. Sid then carefully put her on the ground, which caused her to wake up from her sleep, and as she woke up she didn't feel that agonizing pain she usually felt. The white-haired elf then started looking all over her body, and once she saw that it was all clear she looked up in surprise and with teary eyes asked, "How is it possible? I was supposed to die, how am I still alive?" Alpha then decided to introduce herself. "I am Alpha, and I belong to an organization called Shadow Garden." Alpha then went on a long rant about everything she learned and about how her master was the one to cure her and heal her body. The white-haired girl then bowed down towards the floor and with teary eyes said, thank you, many more times, expressing her gratitude. Even though she was grateful, she was still shocked by all the information Alpha has provided her. It would almost seem unreal if it didn't sound logically and totally plausible. She then looked at Sid with wonder and gratitude in her eyes. Sid, while looking at her, just surrounded her in his shadow and got her dressed in the slime suit, making it a perfect fit for her, and once he dispelled the shadow he said, "From today forward you shall throw away the previous name you once held, and from now on shall be known as Beta. Welcome to Shadow Garden." And with that, Beta has officially joined Shadow Garden, becoming the second member to join. 2 weeks later. Beta's face can be seen to have a green coloring as she kept getting sick after cutting down a bandit after their annual bandit hunting to get more training in. Due to Beta not being a part of Shadow Garden for long, she is still indecisive about what to do with her life and how to go about it, which distracted her during battle. which gave the bandit a perfect opportunity to deal a decisive blow on her, but before that could happen the head of the bandit just flew off his shoulders. Alpha was the one who saved her, as she has gotten much stronger after practicing her swordsmanship with Igris and all the other knights Sid has in his ever-growing army. After Alpha finishes off the last bandit, Beta can be seen still out of it and distracted, which causes Alpha to just shake her head and sigh and try to comfort her. But no matter how hard to try, she still couldn't get through Beta. Alpha's last choice was to ask help from her master, but before she could ask for help, Sid just grabbed onto her shoulder and said with a confident smirk, "Don't worry, I got this." Alpha just gave him a smirk back, having full confidence in her master's ability to be able to help Beta. And with that they all went to sleep. After a night out bandit hunting, Beta goes to bed in an abandoned house in the middle of a ghost town, which Sid remodeled with the help of his shadow soldiers, and just lays there staring at the ceiling, unable to fall asleep properly due to her frequent night terrors. And while still staring at the ceiling, she hears a chair next to her bed scoot closer, which causes her to jump slightly, and when she looked over she saw her master with a book on his hands. She then softly whispered, "Master Shadow." Due to Sid constantly calling himself the Shadow Monarch, both Alpha and Beta have started to call him Master Shadow, out of respect. Sid then looks at Beta with a soft smile and says, "So I heard you are having difficulty in deciding what to do next and what to do with your life, I hear." Beta with a bit of hesitation just slowly nods. Sid just nodded right back and says, "Very well then, I guess I'll just have to share a bit of my knowledge and wisdom with you." Beta then gets a bit excited about being able to learn new things about the one she now calls Master. Sid then proceeded to tap the side of his head as he said, "You see, in my head there is the knowledge and wisdom that spans across multiple worlds and universes, aka manga, novels, and anime." Sid thought the last part to himself. As expected of Master, no wonder he's so smart and strong, Beta thought as her worship towards her master increased. "Are you ready?" he asks her, which was followed by Beta rapidly nodding. Sid then brings his hand near his mouth and clears his throat. Ahem ahem ahem. And in a deep voice he starts off. Fame, wealth, power. He then proceeded to tell the best story that ever existed. 16, Chapter 16, Omni POV. After seeing that Beta was peacefully asleep, Sid just put the book he was holding for decoration on the seat he was sitting on and with a smile sank onto his shadow. And as he was about to appear in his room, he noticed that his sister was inside waiting for him. Seeing this, he just sighed before appearing outside in the yard by his window. To make it look like he was sneaking in, he started to climb the side of the mansion and opened the window to his room, and as he stepped foot inside, Claire cleared her throat. "Ahem. What could you have been doing in the middle of the night that made you think it was okay to be sneaking around and coming home late, mister?" Sid sighed once again and said, "Training." Claire just gave him an unimpressed look. She then stood up from sitting on his bed and walked towards Sid and grabbed him by his ear. She then started pulling his ear and started to reprimand him. "You're just 10 years old, you should know that it's dangerous to be staying out so late. Why do you always make me worry about you? You really shouldn't worry, you do know I'm way stronger than you." A tick mark appeared on her head, showing just how pissed off she got at that statement, and said, "I'll show you who's stronger." He went to throw a punch to his face, but Sid just casually caught it, making Claire even angrier. "Just let me hit you once so I could show you who's stronger." Sid didn't even bother replying to her and just moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and picked her up. While being held up, Claire started kicking her legs, saying, "Let me go and fight me, I'll show you just how strong I am." "No," was all Sid said before he proceeded to turn around and suplex Claire into the bed, which caused her to let out a surprised yelp. Claire then repositioned herself on the bed and grabbed Sid, dragging him in as they started to wrestle and turn around on the bed. They continued twisting and turning and grabbing onto each other until Claire was on top of Sid, grabbing his hands and putting them above his head. Panting a bit, Claire, while looking into Sid's eyes, said, "Who's stronger now?" Sid, looking right back into her eyes, said, "You know I letting you win, right?" Claire just continued to look deep into his eyes while still breathing heavily. Claire then started to lower her head slightly while still looking into his eyes, and with one final look she closed her eyes and lowered her head right onto his lips, causing their lips to connect and kiss Sid. Her eyes then shot wide open upon realizing what she has done, and with a panicked expression she got off of him. She then started scrambling, getting off the bed and started sprinting towards the door with tears in her eyes while continuously muttering, "I'm sorry." Claire then left the room, closing the door behind her, and with her face between her hands started running down the corridor and into her room, where she proceeded to get under the covers and bury her face inside her pillow and let out a muffled scream. "Ah!" She then started to rapidly kick her feet and continue screaming into her pillow. "I can't believe I kissed him." Meanwhile, Sid is just laying in bed with his arms spread out while looking at the ceiling. Well, that was interesting. He just shook his head as he drifted off to sleep, not even bothering to question what just happened. The next day with Beta. Beta can be seen waking up and stretching from having the best sleep of her life. As expected of Master, thanks to him I was able to have a peaceful sleep, when I hadn't been able to have in a long time, Beta thought with watery eyes. "I can't wait for Master to continue where he left off," Beta said out loud as she got out of bed and got ready for her day in training. As for Claire, Claire can be seen looking up towards the ceiling with dark circles under her eyes as she hadn't been able to fall asleep due to her previous actions. "He's never going to forgive me, I took advantage of him." Claire at this point just found it difficult to get out of bed. After a while she then heard a knock on the door, which was followed by Sid saying, "I'm coming in." Before Claire had any chance to protest, Sid just barged right in and closed the door behind him, and as he did he walked towards Claire's bed and said, "What are you doing still laying in bed? You normally are the first one to wake up." Claire just grabbed her covers and covered her head to stop him from looking at her, afraid that he would hate her for what she did. Sid, seeing her, just sighed before grabbing the sheets and pulling them off of her. "Just get up already, and if you're worried about what happened last night, don't worry about it." Sid then gave her a playful smirk and rubbed his lower lip with his thumb as he said, "As a matter of fact, I enjoyed it." He then got closer to Claire and lowered his head, giving her a kiss on the lips. And as he back away, he just continued to give her a playful smirk as he said, "There, now we're even." Claire just continued to lay there on her bed with a shocked expression, not knowing what to do next. Sid then started walking towards the door and said, "If I don't see you in the training yard after breakfast, I'ma assume you just want another one, so hurry it up." And as soon as Sid left, Claire's entire face turned bright red as she grabbed a pillow to her side and hugged it tight as she started rolling around in bed. "He kissed me," she kept muttering. And that's how the morning started in the Kajino household. 17, Chapter 17. Omni POV. It has been 2 weeks since Sid's relationship with his sister has gotten so ambiguous. Apart from his ambiguous relationship with his sister, Sid also spent it training both Alpha and Beta. After Sid started sharing stories with Beta, she has gotten a bit more relaxed and is a bit more determined. She also gets less distracted while fighting bandits and doesn't get as disgusted as she used to. The three of them could be seen in an open field awaiting for Sid's order. Sid then proceeded to sit down on the floor with his legs crossed, and while sitting down he started to summon multiple shadow soldiers. And as the shadow soldiers started appearing, he said to them, "I want you to fight them, while I do something. They should help you learn how to fight if you ever find yourself being surrounded. It should also help you be able to learn how to fight enemies that comes in waves and doesn't grow tired." After thinking about it for a while, Sid then summons Igris and said, "Help them out. You're the best swordsman I know, so they should be able to learn a lot from you." Igris just nodded and brought the girls with the rest of the shadow soldier a bit further away from Sid to let him concentrate on what he is doing. "I have been neglecting it since I haven't really used it, but my mana core has been in the beginning of the silver stage for a while. I think it's time for it to finally reach the white core stage." And with that, Sid closes his eyes and starts concentrating on the mana around him and started to pull it closer towards him. And while that was happening, both Alpha and Beta were surrounded on both sides. They stood back to back, covering each other's blind spot, and as they stood back to back they both shot off at the same time, going in opposite directions. With a sword in their hands, both Alpha and Beta kept attacking the soldiers and parrying their attacks. In some occasions, Igris who join the fray and send sword slashes towards them and guide their sword in the right movement. Alpha, with her abundance of magic power, was moving at an incredible speed and weaving her sword masterfully. Although Beta didn't have nearly as much magic as Alpha, she made it up with her versatility and graceful movements. And while they continued sparring, Sid broke through each stage of his silver core and was about to make it into a white mana core. "Well, let's get this over with already. I really haven't had any uses for my mana core, so I have been neglecting it, so I better just upgrade it to the highest stage possible." After compressing mana and purifying it for 5 whole minutes, a crack appeared on the silver core. After a while, more cracks then began to appear until crack, boom. And as the silver core broke, a white shine took its place, which was followed by an explosion, causing the ground to cave in slightly due to the amount of mana it released and the pressure it exerted. And as the white core finally formed, Sid breathed out black smoke, expelling out all of the leftover impurities. While moving my mana along my body and examining my white core, I still felt that it wasn't enough. It feels like I could do one more thing with it. With these thoughts, Sid delved deeper into his mana core, and after fully examining it, he thought, "I see, so the next step is the integration stage." After thinking about it for a while, an idea suddenly came to mind. What if I integrate it into my black heart? If I do this, I don't got to worry about it ever being destroyed. I get, theoretically, an infinite amount of never-ending mana, and if it does get destroyed, it would just regenerate right back to how it was. Since it would then turn metaphysical, meaning that even if it exists in the real world, it also exists in my soul, or more likely spiritually. And so with that, Sid gently wrapped his mana core with ruler's authority and a bit of magic from his black heart and started to slowly and carefully move it towards his heart. He was being careful in order to not break it, cause if he broke it he would have to start over again, which would just be an obnoxious task. So with great care he slowly moved it, and as he kept moving it, his mana core and black heart made contact, and as they touch, a purple light soon spread across his chest, which lasted for a second. I can feel it. Such an abundance of mana. Luckily my mana control is impeccable. My very own heart has turned into a mana reactor. With this I don't ever have to worry about ever running out of magic, and the possibilities are endless. When Sid opened up his eyes, what he saw shocked him. Every single one of his shadow soldiers has started coming out of his shadow and started kneeling before him. Alpha and Beta at this point just looked around, not knowing what is going on, but quickly followed everyone else's example and knelt down as well. And when all the shadows came out, they spoke at the same time. "Congratulations to our liege the Shadow Monarch for growing even stronger in power." Sid, listening to all this, just rubbed the back of his head in a shy manner and said, "Aw, thanks guys," while looking around his shadow soldiers. He then stopped when he spotted Yukihim. After which he recalled back all of his shadow soldiers except for Yukihim and the group that was sparring with Alpha and Beta. Since when did you grow 9 tails, Yukihim? Last time you only had 6. Yukihim then bowed slightly and said, it's thanks to you, your majesty. We don't know how, but whatever you just did has made our strength and power grow even stronger. Sid grew even more surprised, she could now even talk. Sid then gave her a nonchalant nod and recalled her back into his shadow. So they grew even more powerful, cool. I'm really becoming closer and closer to an unimaginable existence. Seeing that it was getting late, he started stretching and said, that's enough girls, we have our daily hunt to commence. Hearing him, both Alpha and Beta stopped what they were doing and nodded and came closer to him. Once they were close enough, he called back all of his shadows that were training them and proceeded to summon Kaisel and fly into the distance. Author's note. To everyone that's going to say, oh that's not possible, it doesn't make sense. The only thing I could say to that is, shut the fuck up you filthy mongrel, in this universe I'm its god, so whatever I fucking say goes and you don't get a say, all you could do is grovel and beg and plead for more. So yeah, a lot of people were saying that his black heart has infinite mana. I just thought it just boosted it, apparently I was wrong, so I fixed it, there. And the god of compromise does it again. 18, Chapter 18, Omni POV. While flying with Kaisel, they soon flew across an abandoned town and saw it infested with bandits. Sid didn't even have to push Alpha or Beta this time, since both girls just jumped off on their own free will. And as soon as they landed, they started walking sensually towards the bandits that were looking at them with lust in their eyes. A bandit then licked his lips as he looked at them and said, although they're small, I bet I could still find good uses for them. Alpha and Beta just looked at them in disgust. Another bandit then called out to them, why don't you girls join us for some fun? I bet I can rock your worlds with a night with me. Another bandit then yelled, hey boss, some fresh meat appeared and they look like they could sell very well. Soon a rugged-sounding man was then heard, ha 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 ha, that's great, we couldn't do anything with the one we recently caught due to the rotting skin all around it. A buff-looking guy then came out from a building with a big sword in his hands. As soon as they heard there's someone with rotting skin being held captive, both Alpha and Beta just looked at each other and nodded. Alpha summoned a blade in her hands and sprinted towards the boss, while Beta just closed her eyes and held out her hand. Soon she started to gather slime in her hands. She then squished the slime in her hand, which caused it to take the form of a bow. She then started to gather mana in her eyes, making her vision better, and as she pulled the string of the bow, an arrow made out of slime soon formed. The bandits then started sneering at them both for their foolishness as the boss then ran towards Alpha, and when their sword met, Alpha was sent flying due to their size difference, which caused her to click her tongue. Bandits then started running towards Beta with their swords in their hands. Beta, seeing them coming, shot her arrow towards the bandit closer to her. The bandit, seeing this, just sneered and swung his sword ready to knock it off its course. He didn't even add magic, thinking that it was useless, which was a mistake on his part. As soon as the arrow made contact with the sword was then destroyed, leaving the bandit in shock as the arrow then went right through his head and into the head of the bandit right behind him, killing 2 people with 1 shot. And as soon as the arrow got lodged inside the head of the second bandit, it started to turn back into goo. Alpha, as she was thrown, just flipped herself in the air and landed safely and shot off towards the boss once again. The boss, seeing Alpha committing the same mistake again, just sneered at her and thought, foolish girl, it didn't work the first time, why would it work the second time? He then swung his sword with a downward strike towards Alpha, but instead of confronting him head on, Alpha simply sidestepped and turned her sword into a spear and thrusted it right into his chest and into his heart. And with a stunned expression, he just muttered, wah, as blood soon started to overflow from his mouth and he collapsed on the ground still in shock. That was the price he paid for underestimating the girl due to her age. Alpha then turned her spear into a sword once again and sprinted towards the other members of the bandits' crew, amputating all of their limbs. She was then joined by Beta, who started doing the same, and by the end of it they both flicked their sword, clearing it from any blood on the blade. Sid then came walking with his hands in his pockets, and when he arrived in front of them he patted both of their head and said good job, which caused them to smile slightly. Sid then went towards the building where the boss came out of, and inside he found a girl with blackened skin inside a cage, all chained up. Luckily there are bad premonitions towards the possessed, or who knew what kind of abuse other than physical abuse they would have gotten. Sid then knelt down towards the cage, and as he grabbed it he yanked it, completely destroying the front part of it. Sid then destroyed the chains holding her, which was followed by Sid putting a hand on the possessed body. His hand then turned slightly green as he started to cure the little girl little by little. Soon a cute girl with dark blue hair was seen sitting down on the floor naked while looking towards Sid with teary eyes. She then started to sob uncontrollably. Thank you, I don't know how I could ever repay you for healing me. Sid then gave her a reassuring smile and said while extending his hand, you could do that by joining me, and as the girl took a hold of his hand he said, from now on you shall be known as Gamma, welcome to Shadow Garden. Sid, as soon as he named her, wrapped her in her very own slime suit. And with that they exited the building, and as they walked out he said, Alpha, explain to Gamma about the detail of our organization. Alpha then nodded and said, of course master. Well, you see. With that Alpha started her usual lecture about the Diabolos cult and their evil doings. When she was finished, Gamma just stood there in shock and said, "And to think our leader has been fighting such an organization all by himself." Gamma then started to create her own narrative in her head about Sid's entire existence. Alpha then leaned over and whispered to her ear, "We don't call him leader, we call him Master Shadow." Gamma then leaned towards Alpha and asked, whispering, why. It was Beta who answered, whispering as well, because he is known as the Shadow Monarch, the supreme ruler of the shadows, where not even the dead are spared from his clutches. Gamma then gained stars in her eyes and in a hushed voice said, "I don't really get it, but that sounds so cool." Sid just smiled while listening to them with his heightened senses, and wanting to show off a bit to their new member he said, "Come forth and serve," which caused beings made out of shadows to come out of the bodies of the dead and kneel down expressing their loyalty. Sid then quickly called them to his shadow as he just smirked to himself. Meanwhile Beta walked behind Gamma and reiterated, "Not even the dead are spared from his clutches." Gamma then just had a look of disbelief on her face and turned to look at Beta and Alpha, who were giving her a teasing smirk. She then whispered to herself, "Master Shadow is just too awesome." And with that they left the abandoned town with Gamma officially joining Shadow Garden. 19, Chapter 19. Omni POV. It's been a month since Gamma has officially joined and she can be seen tumbling on the floor with a blindfold on her face. Sid looking at her just put a hand on his face and sighed in exasperation. While Alpha and Beta also had blindfold and were running around in an obstacle course Sid had created using a bit of earth magic. Normally Sid won't have such a reaction when someone failed at the obstacle course since it was normal since they couldn't really see, but Gamma didn't even leave the starting line. Sid then tried to give Gamma a hint by shouting at them, "Remember, try to get a feeling to your surroundings using your magic. It will help heighten your senses and make them more sensitive." Sighing he then decided to single out Gamma. "Gamma, you don't have to rush, just one step at a time, there is no time limit. Alpha and Beta are just competitive, so you shouldn't be dragged on by their flow." Gamma just nodded as she took one step at a time until she started to get confident, which caused her to trip once again when she made it towards the first obstacle. Seeing Gamma look at the ground sadly, Sid just had a soft expression on his face and shook his head with a small smile, and to encourage her he started clapping and said, "You made it quite far this time. See, you keep getting better after each practice." Gamma then gained a happy expression and pumped both of her fists in excitement, and got right back up and started the course again, but with more determination. And that's how they spent the rest of the day. Seeing that it was late in the afternoon he said to them, "Today you're going to be walking through the forest with the blindfold on. It could be a little trip and also some light training where you all could relax." And with that they started on their journey. Sid has made them carry a bag with some heavy weights that weigh 1 ton on each of their backs and made them start walking towards the west in a slow manner, and as they walked they started talking to each other and growing closer. While the walk Sid has to keep grabbing Gamma and moving her towards a specific direction, otherwise she would have been lost. But Gamma was slowly learning. Although she sucked with things that had to do with anything physically, her magic senses were coming along just nice. Although it wasn't the best, she was getting somewhere. They continued walking until it was night out, which Sid then decided to give them a break. "You can take off the blindfolds and backpack, we're going camping today." And as they threw their bag on the ground slightly caved in due to the weights. They then let out a sigh of relief. "We got to find wood and go hunting for food, and you are forbidden to use any magic." And with a sigh they soon started searching the forest for anything that could be of use, fruits, berry mushrooms, anything that's edible. Alpha then soon found some footprints on the ground. She then called out to everyone, "I think I found something." And with that everyone soon started following right behind Alpha with slow careful steps. POV switch. The hunt. "The hunt will keep me alive, the hunt will lead me to survival. I am the strongest, everyone else is the weak, they couldn't beat me." Sniff sniff. Prey. Growled. "Food, food, food." Kept muttering following the smell. "I don't need the pack. I'm super strong without it, all I need is food and I'll recover. The prey is the key to survival." Kept growling as she followed the smelled. "My mouth is already watering, I could already smell it. The prey, it will keep me alive and make me stronger to stop the black spots from spreading. It hurts, but the hunt mustn't stop. It hurts, but mustn't stop. Keep hunting. Don't stop hunting." Omni POV. Even with her body almost about to collapse due to demon possession, she kept moving on and didn't stop, as she believes that the hunt is the way to survive. As the daughter of a low-ranked concubine and a chief who had over 100 wives, she wasn't giving proper meals, only low amount of portions, which wasn't enough to sustain her. She decided that since she wasn't getting proper food she should just get it herself, and so she went hunting, and when she did, it was unexpectedly easy for her. She managed to kill a boar twice her size, and eat every part of it, greedily savoring every drop of blood. And that was only when she was 3 years old. Even her clansmen were surprised in such an unexpected thing. The more she grew and fought, the stronger she got, and that was all thanks to the hunt, which has solidified itself into something very important too. Since it's thanks to the hunt that has kept her alive since she was little. That was unfortunately until she had contracted demon possession. Due to the strict rules of her tribe, any being caught with such a disease would be immediately exiled and hunted down. Due to her experience she was able to hide and escape the pursuit, but by that point her body was already weakened, which is why she believes the only way to survive is to hunt. At this point it's hard to just walk much alone hunt, so with her great willpower she started crawling on the floor searching for any prey to feast on. She then heard a voice. It was Alpha. "It looks like you could use some help," said Alpha as she reached out her hand to try and heal her like her master once showed her. And as she reached out her hand, tried to take a bite out of her hand for getting too close. "Pray, I can still hunt," thought, and tried moving once again. Alpha, seeing such determination on a being plagued by demon possession even though it was close to dying, was quite a shock to Alpha. She then sighed and called out, "Master, I think I need your help with this one." As soon as Sid came into view, every fiber of being told her just one thing: submit or die. And as a wolf beastkin with a great pride, she did the only thing she knew: roll over and show her stomach in submission. As a wolf beastkin, it's in her instinct to submit to the strong, especially one far above you in terms of power. But Sid was just in a whole other level too. There was no other option but to submit to him and become a part of his pack. Sid, seeing her show her belly, just softly chuckled as he put a hand on her belly and started to heal her. Alpha was also to the side trying to help and started to treat her. Once Sid was done, he then said, "From now on you shall be known as Delta." The wolf girl then pointed to herself and said, "Delta." Sid just nodded, which made Delta nod as well and say with a big smile, "Since boss man said Delta is now named Delta, then Delta shall be Delta." She then pointed towards Alpha. You're probably his second in command, but you're too weak, so I'll be his second in command from now on," she said with a satisfied expression. Alpha's eyes then grew cold as she raised her magic power and said in a cold voice, "Care to repeat that one more time?" Delta then started to release some pressure on her own and said, "I challenge you for the rights to be his second in command." 20, Chapter 20. Omni POV. Alpha then turned towards Sid and said, "Master, can I have the permission to put her in her place?" Due to being the first member and the leader of all future members that join, Alpha has taken that role with great pride. It's one of things she's most proud of. So hearing someone who just joined saying that she was weak and was going to take something that she has great pride in, she took that as the highest degree of insult, and such a person should he put in her place. Sid, seeing that it need to happen, just nodded. "You don't have to worry about hurting her too badly, I could heal her up if anything happens." Delta then gave Sid a thumbs up and said, "Okay boss, see you here, even boss man doesn't have confidence in you to win." Everyone just looked at Delta in disbelief. Beta then turned her face and covered her mouth to stop herself from laughing. "PHTTT, hear that Alpha master doesn't have any confidence in you." Gamma covered her mouth with the back of her hand and started giggling as well. "Yeah, Alpha master has no confidence in you to win this," which caused both Beta and Gamma to lean on each other and break down laughing. "Ha ha ha ha." Alpha's face then grew red from embarrassment and gritted her teeth. Sid just chuckled and shook his head at their banter, which caused Alpha to look at him in surprise, not expecting her master to laugh as well. Alpha then put her head down with her hair covering her eyes. Meanwhile Delta got on all fours, and as she was about to leap towards Alpha, Alpha simply disappeared from her view completely. Alpha then appeared right in front of her face, winding up her fist, and as she did she said in a distorted voice, "You made master laugh at me, and for that I won't forgive you." She then smashed Delta's face onto the ground, completely caving it in, and without giving Delta any chance to retaliate she started to punch Delta's face again and again. Blood was splattering around everywhere. Delta tried to counter Alpha's attacks, but Alpha would just redirect the force and continued pummeling Delta. To not kill her, Alpha turned her punches into slaps and started to slap Delta across the face back and forth until Sid had to step in and stop her. "Alpha, that's enough." She stopped trying to fight for a while now. Alpha stopped when she heard her master and got off of Delta, and once she got off of her, she started to stand up but a bit shakily. Delta's face at this point was bruised and bloody without recognition. Large bumps were sticking out of her face. She tried to take a step forward but fell head first unconscious. Luckily Sid appeared before her and caught her before she fell to the ground. With a hand on her head, Sid started to use healing magic, which made Delta look exactly how she did before the fight started. With a sigh, Sid picked her up and put her on his back, giving her a piggyback ride as she was still unconscious. Alpha then shook her hands to wipe off any blood on her hands, and as she did she turned and looked at both Beta and Gamma. Seeing Alpha looking at them, they both ran and hid behind Sid, scared in case they were next. And with that they went back hunting. It took a while but Delta managed to wake up. She woke up with her head laying in Sid's lap and the smell of cooked meat right in front of the fire they managed to make. Sid, seeing that Delta was awake, took a big chunk of the meat, and as he was about to give it to Delta he asked, "Anything you gotta say to Alpha, Delta?" With her wolf ears slummed down she turned towards Alpha and said, "Sorry for calling you weak and trying to take your position." Sid then patted her head, which caused her tail to wag in happiness, and said, "Good girl, and feed her some meat," which made her tail wag even faster. Alpha, who was sitting at the opposite side of the fire, just sighed, "Fine, I guess I forgive you too." And so a week passes with them staying in the forest. Luckily Sid had the foresight to lie to his parents and say he was staying with friends and they were going out camping and training to get stronger, which they believed and allowed him to go since he has shown how strong he is. They have confidence in him to be able to take care of himself. Although it took Claire some convincing to do so, after a week Delta has managed to fit right in. Now they were in front of a mountain which was close to an elven city. "I kinda forgot I had gravity magic. I could use it to make it harder for them to move and make them stronger. For today's training, you guys are going mountain climbing, but that isn't all. Sid's eyes then glowed a bit before saying, you're going to have to do it with enhanced gravity, and with that Sid started to increase the amount of gravity they were experiencing, which caused the legs of Alpha, Beta, and Gamma to almost give out. The only one that was fine was Delta due to her beast heritage. Sid just increased the gravity towards just Delta, which caused her eyes to grow wide due to the force and was having difficulty standing straight. He then pointed to the top of the mountain and said, well, what are you waiting for? And with that they started climbing the mountain, although they had to stop on a few occasions due to Gamma tripping on the pebbles on the ground. It got to a point where Gamma tripped on a rock and had rolled all the way down the mountain while screaming for someone to help her. And with a sigh they had to wait for Gamma to catch up again. And as they continued on their hike, Delta then started smelling the air. Sniff sniff. Which she then grabbed her nose with both her hands. YUCK, it smells like how I used to smell before Boss Man found me. Alpha's expression then grew serious and asked, where is it coming from, Delta? Delta, while still holding her nose, pointed forwards a bit more upwards into the mountains with shaky fingers due to the gravity. Everyone then quickened their pace. If it wasn't for the gravity they would have sprinted. After a few minutes they found a blackened body in the middle of the mountains slowly blinking at them. Sid then just sighed and knelt down and with a reassuring smile just extended his hands and started to heal the body. What appeared was a cute little girl with light blue hair showing her gratitude. Sid then got her dressed in the customary slime suit. And as he helped her up, Sid then said with a smile, I don't care where you came from, I don't care what you used to be named, and I don't care what you used to do previously. From now on you shall throw everything away from your past except your pride and dignity. From now on you shall be called Epsilon and you shall become an honorary member of Shadow Garden. Alpha, you know what to do next. Alpha just nodded with a serious expression. Alpha then started her usual routine, we follow our master, the Shadow Monarch, as we fight against. Epsilon, when she heard everything, gained stars in her eyes and said whoa. The other four just nodded and said whoa indeed at the same time. Sid then turned towards Epsilon and said, since this is your first day with us, I won't start your training today, you can start it tomorrow. Epsilon then nodded with a determined expression and looked towards the other four members who were still having difficulty standing. She then asked, what kind of training are you guys doing? Sid then slowly introduced the pressure of gravity onto her, and as she kept getting heavier and heavier her expression grew more shocked until Sid stopped and said, they have to endure this type of pressure, but it's much harder on them since they're stronger. Epsilon then looked at them in shock and in admiration. And with that they continued their hike with Epsilon following behind asking the other members questions. 21, Chapter 21. Some of you are not going to be happy with it, but this chapter and the chapter after this one, and a tiny bit of the chapter after that one since the introduction of Lilim are word for word from the light novel. Oh, but author, that's boring. I came for something original, and to that I say STFU. I have to do it. Not a lot of people even know Zeta's backstory, which is by far the saddest backstory of the 7 shades in the light novel so far, Imo. So this is for all my ignorant people out there that are too lazy to look it up. Omni POV. It has been 3 weeks since Epsilon has joined Shadow Garden. Sid this time decided to train them on the beach in the middle of the night. What he was teaching them was what he calls magic power control. Sid stood in front of everyone and said, today I'm teaching you on how to control your magic. There is more to magic than simple enhancements. Sid then started to walk towards the sea, and instead of sinking in, he stayed floating on top of the water. He then continued walking, and as he made it a bit farther away he turned to them and amplified his voice. Should you be able to control your magic, almost anything is possible. You won't be able to leave until you be able to at least stay standing on water. Sid then went on to explain the process on how it's done. He then returned to them and started to guide them. The one who had it easier was Epsilon. Due to her constantly manipulating the slime suit, she had to find out any other tricks she could do with it. So her magic control is already better than most. The one who had it the worst was actually Delta, since due to her aggressive nature found it hard to be precise and careful with her magic. So instead of actually trying to teach her how to control it, Sid just told her, try to enhance your body so it's fast enough to simply run on water and you don't have to be so precise, and Delta did just that. While the other were training and dawn was about to break, Sid decided to enhance his eyes to see if he could see anything beyond the ocean, and what he saw left him quite shocked. He saw a female cat beastkin holding a baby while looking across the ocean. She then turned around and was surrounded by people dressed up in priest outfits. Without warning, Sid's face turned serious and said, fly Kaisel, and with that Kaisel appeared right underneath him and took him towards the sky. Hearing the seriousness of his voice, everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look at Sid, and once they saw his serious face their face turned serious as well. And once they saw him take off to the direction of the ocean, they looked at each other and nodded. Alpha took Gamma in a princess carry and started running at full speed across the water. Beta soon followed behind but was much slower, who was followed by Epsilon. While Delta just got on all 4 and followed Sid's advice and went on a full sprint across the water. A few hours earlier in the Gold Panther tribe, Lilim, who was asleep, woke up when she heard a commotion in the middle of the night. She woke up feeling hope that maybe it's her father that came back. As for why her father was away in the first place, Lilim has contracted the symptoms of possession 1 month ago. When she showed her parents, they were shocked and she started crying. Right then and there she offered herself to be burned at the stake due to the rules of the Beastkins. But her father would never allow such a thing. How could he loved his daughter too much to do something like that. And so he left on a journey to try and find a cure, but after a month nothing was heard. That's why Lilim was optimistic about the commotion outside. Maybe it's father, maybe he's back. And as she went outside she did find her father, but her father was on his knees tied up covered in blood. Torches that were lit surrounding him. Seeing such a scene her mother then yelled out boldly, "What is the meaning of this? Looks like the filth hasn't been drive away yet." The one who stepped forward with a torch on his hands was the head of a branch family from the Golden Panther clan. "You know the rules all clans follow, all filth shall be cleansed up no matter what." Lilim's mother just stood in front of her protecting her in silence. "Where is the filthy? Answer us," the branch head said as he pulled out his sword and stabbed her father in the shoulder. "I don't know," the father said with a hoarse voice. The head of the branch family just looked at him with a cold look in his eyes as he pushed the sword further down. Blood gushed everywhere while the sound of a bone breaking was soon heard. Seeing no reaction from him, the branch head just said, "How boring," before stabbing the sword once again. "Stop it. You won't be forgiven for aiming your sword towards the head of the clan," Lilim's mother said. The branch head then sneered and said, "I will be forgiven. From now on I'm the new head of the main clan of the Golden Panthers." "And what proof could you possibly have, to make yourself the new head?" said the mother. "A priest from the Holy Church came towards the village and told us about the existence of traces of demon possessions. Apparently on the east the Holy Church collects anyone who has sign of the possession." A new figure then appeared from within the group. This time it was a man wearing a priest outfits, and as he appeared he gave a faint smile, said, "The filth must be handled immediately, otherwise who knows when it would spread and cause chaos and destruction." Lilim's father then protested. "Liar." The priest then turned to him with a mocking gaze, asked, "Did you say something, beastkin?" "I said you are lying, human." "What lies have I made?" "Everything. Demon possession doesn't exist, it's a lie made by the Holy Church." "Have you lost your mind?" the branch head said. As if instigating it, everyone started sneering towards him. But the sneers were ignored by the priest and father as they just continued staring at each other. "Do you have any proof?" the priest asked. The father then starts off by saying, "The Golden Panther clan is a long-established bloodline. All the chieftains have inherited the story of the great hero, the story of the beastkin hero, the one that directly fought against the demon Diabolos." "A fairy tale then?" the priest presumes. "Yes, it is a fairy tale. However, it slightly differs from the fairy tale passed on today in the world. The heroes were women, not men, and the demon possessions are blessing, not a curse." The priest's eyes sharpened. "That statement is considered an act of blasphemy against the Holy Church. Fairy tales will fade with time, stop talking nonsense." "Is that so? This is a heroic tale passed down only to the head of the clan for generations. It will not fade so easily. Above all else, we are a clan of the Golden Panthers. We are descendants of the great hero Lily, one of the 3 heroes that has defeated the demon Diabolos. That's the evidence." "In other words?" the priest asks. "In other words, the stories of the heroes passed down by the Golden Panthers are the truth, while the Holy Church distorted the facts." 22, Chapter 22, Omni POV. There was a long silence after Lilim's father's statement, which was broken by loud laughter that echoed all around from everyone. "Ha ha ha ha." The priest was also smiling, but he wasn't smiling with his eyes show quite an unhappy expression. I see, so this is what you meant, that those who are possessed are the playthings of the Holy Church and they're actually descendants of the great heroes. That's why there's no need to purify the filth, is that what you mean?" "Ha ha ha ha," the head of the branch family spoke. "Don't be stupid," a man from the branch family said as he punched the father across the face, punch after punch. With a bloody fist the man said, "The show's over, where's the filthy one?" The father just had a smirk on his face as he said, "I ain't saying a thing, even if I speak you'll just torture me and burn everything to the ground." The man from the branch family pulled out his sword when he heard him. "Stop it," Lilim said with a shaky voice, attracting everyone's attention. With shaky knees she stepped forward and stuttered, I'm the demon," she said with tears in her eyes as she shook violently. Her father then called out to her in a soft voice and said, "Listen to me, the Golden Panther clan are the descendants of the great hero Lily, the one who saved the world. This family is a family with proud blood. Why did Lily give us stories of heroes? Did she just let the chieftains pass them down from generations to generations? There is a reason for that. We have a mission." "Father," Lilim softly called out, "you have the blood of the hero in your veins, stronger than anybody else. You are strong, wise, and proud daughter. Lilim, go east, there is someone there that could cure your demonic possession. That's where our mission lies." Her father, seeing Lilim unsure of herself, just gives her a reassuring smile. "I'm sure if it's you, you can do it." The father then turned towards the mother and said, "Take care of them." The mother then gave a small nod and pulled Lilim closer. A beastkin close to them then said, "You think I'll let them go?" "I'll make sure of it," the father said. The sound of something pulsing was soon heard, and it was coming from the father's body. A huge amount of magical energy then explodes from his body, destroying his bindings. "What is that power?" someone from the branch family shouted. "The Golden Panther have thick bestial blood, I just manipulate them and freed them." The father now looks more beast than man, with his long golden hair that's shaped like a mane and hair growing everywhere. This is a technique passed down only to the chief, a forbidden technique that can take one's life. Blood was seen coming out of his eyes and veins. Go away. He roared. Lilim's father stood in front of them protecting them after turning into a rampaging beast. Go. Run. He shouted to them. Father, come with us. Lilim quickly yelled towards her father. I can't, he said. And when he turned around, a look of shock was plastered on Lilim's face as her father soon had half his face turned into a complete beast. I'll eventually become into a beast, before that happens. I don't want to, father. Lilim tried to reach for her father's back but couldn't reach. The priest pulled out red-colored chains and slashed it towards him. Gah! The father then deflected it with his right arm. At that moment her mother picked her up and carried her away while she just screamed for her father. Father. No. That was the last time Lilim saw her father's back. Her mother was soon carrying her through the forest. She didn't hear any footsteps for a while. Luckily her mother was a master hider. However, soon the presence of pursuers were faster approaching. Some members of the Gold Panther have special noses, so they must have joined the pursuit as well. Her mother then put her down near a river and said, let's split up. Cross the river and head east while I go southeast. And with that she put the little baby she was carrying with her onto her arms and said, take care of your little brother, Lilim. I don't want to. I want to go with you, mother. Don't be selfish, just have a little patience. We'll meet again at the Midgard Kingdom, said the mother as she gave Lilim a tight hug. Then, why did you give me my little brother? Lilim. I can't fight, I can't run as well as you. You should be better off with me. Lilim pleaded. Lilim, listen. No. Lilim buried her head into her mother's chest and shook her head. Before departing from her, her mother told her about how her father used to be, that she shouldn't blame herself for him sacrificing his life for her. Lilim, take care of your little brother. Lilim then hugged her brother tighter as tears streamed down his cheek. I promise to take care of him. Lilim then washed her smell off of herself and crossed the river after a final goodbye from her mother. She then headed towards the eastern forest. As her mother turned southeast, multiple footsteps were then soon heard. In the east, Lilim can be seen running through the cold forest in the night. She spent the entire time running that by the time she managed to get to the edge of the forest, dawn was about to break. This, she said shocked, this was the very first time she saw the beach. She only read about them in the books she used to study. The ocean, she softly whispered. She then went towards the sea and scooped up a bit of water and tasted it. Salty, she said while sticking out her tongue. Then with a lowered head said, Father, there's nothing. She then sat by the cold beach and said, there's nothing to the east. Where's the mission? Where's the Midgard Kingdom? Her legs at this point felt prickly, and she couldn't take another step. Black bruises extended all the way from her chest. She then looked at her brother, the little tiny life entrusted to her, and with great determination said, let's cross the sea. 23, Chapter 23. Omni POV. Let's go. Let's cross the sea, Lilim said while looking ahead. She knew there was land across the sea. She didn't know if that land was the kingdom of Midgard, but her father said it was, so it had to be there. And as she started walking towards the sea, a voice was soon heard. Oh my, so this is where you were. It was the priest that was fighting with her father, and as he appeared, the only sound that was heard was the jingle of his bloody chains. Lilim backed away slowly, and as she backed away she yelled, Gee, get away. Well, now, on to the question, which one of you was possessed? It wasn't this one and it wasn't that one, the priest said as he threw her father's severed head, which was quickly followed by him throwing her mother's severed head as well. Father, mother, why? Why? Lilim frantically yelled. The priest then continued talking, totally ignoring her mental breakdown. Cases of demon possessions, although rare, could actually happen to the male gender. It's very few, but it's not zero. NN, please, don't hurt my little brother. She then hugged her brother tighter as tears streamed down her face. In that case, which one of you is possessed? Me. I'm the one that's possessed, so please, please leave my little brother. Good girl. I'm glad you're honest. The priest then gets closer to her and started stroking her head with his bloody hands, and as he did he said, we'll probably know each other for a really long time, so allow me to introduce myself. I am a high-ranking priest and my name is Petos. You will be a valuable test subject. Lilim then stuttered out, then, what about my brother? Don't worry, I have no business with children that are not possessed. Petos then swung his spiked chain towards the baby's neck. However, before it can make contact with each other, the chain grew a purple outline as it stopped just a few millimeters away from Lilim's baby brother's neck, stopping it from decapitating it. And as it stopped, a voice full of wrath was soon heard, You filthy mongrel. Petos shocked looked up, and what he saw sent chills down his spine. A being dressed in all black jumping down from a black and purple wyvern, descending into the ground towards him with his boots sticking out slightly, ready to stomp on him. Luckily for Petos, he had enough time to enhance his durability, since as soon as the being's feet touched his face, his head was quickly brought to the sand, where it was blasted everywhere due to the force. Lilim had shielded her brother with her body from the bloody chains and sand. He saved him, he saved my baby brother from being murdered, she thought. And as the sand cleared, you can see the being dressed in black and his hood up covering his face, stepping on Petos' face like he's a bug. You mongrel, you filthy bug, said the being, Shadow, as he squished Petos' face with his foot. He lifted his foot upwards and stomped it on his face once again. Stomp. You fucking piece of shit. Stomp. Fucking lower than trash. Stomp. Fucking waste of space. Stomp. Fucking garbage. Stomp. You don't deserve to be called human. Stomp. Your mother never loved you. Stomp. Your father probably abandoned you. Stomp. You were probably adopted. Stomp. Filthy animal. Stomp. Who goes, stomps, and literally, stomp, tries to, stomp, murder a baby, stomp. Shadow used more force on his last stomp, which caused Petos's head to sink in deeper into the sand, which exploded everywhere, blasting sand into the air. And as Shadow slowly moves his boot from Petos's face's blood just starts to drip down back onto Petos's face. TCH, great, now I have this filth's blood on my shoes, he says as he kicks the air, spraying all the blood that was sticking to his boots off. As for Petos, his entire face at this point is disfigured beyond recognition. Even Lilim, who was holding her little brother, took a peek inside the crater he was in, and barely recognized him. If it wasn't for the priest outfits he was wearing and her undying hate for him, she wouldn't have recognized him. A lot of his teeth were broken, his face slightly caved in, and his nose was at a weird angle. Petos was seen unconscious in the crater with his mouth wide open. Shadow then let out a sigh. Now are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Lilim, when she realized he was talking to her, just shook her head, and as she did she winced in pain due to the demon possession. And as he looked at her he said, "Ah, I see you're a hero's descendant." Lilim's eyes then grew wide in surprise, not expecting him to know of such a thing, but before she could say anything, Shadow held out his hands and placed it in the middle of her chest, and as he did he started to completely heal her demon possession. Seeing this, rivers of tears just kept coming out of her eyes. Before she had any chance to express her gratitude, they heard the sound of splashing waters and the shout of someone calling out to him. "Boss, who are we fighting?" When they turned to the voice they saw everyone running on the ocean, rushing towards him. As for Delta, the one who called out to him was running on all four on the ocean with her tongue sticking out. And as they arrived on land they skidded slightly to slow themselves down, and as they did they pushed sand right into the crater, burying Petos slightly. Sid then pointed towards the forest where multiple priests came out holding the head of every single golden panther. They even had the head of the branch clan leader. They're with the Diablos cult, and it looks like they massacred an entire clan before we arrived trying to get to her, Shadow said while pointing towards Lilim. Hearing this, Alpha put down Gamma as she was still holding her in a Princess Carrie as her expression turned serious. All of their expression turned serious. Even Delta's playful expression was gone. All every one of them felt was just anger due to not being able to prevent such a massacre. Meanwhile, as all the girls turned serious, Lilim was on her knees sobbing while holding the heads of her mother and father with her baby brother in her arms. Sob, "Father, you were right. You were always right." Sob, "There was someone in the east that could heal demon possession." Sob, "They came from the east across the ocean. They came from the east." Sob, "And they did it." Sob, "They healed me completely." Sob. Author's note: I had a lot of fun writing the stomping scene, if y'all couldn't tell, lol. 24, Chapter 24. Omni POV. As everyone heard Lilim's sobs they started to summon their weapons. While the priest who arrived with the heads of all the Golden Panther tribe just looked at the sight of the high priest on the crater, slightly buried in shock. They quickly came out of their shock when they saw the girls pulled out their weapons, which they responded in kind and pulled out their weapons as well. Delta just had a bloodthirsty smile on her face, and as her smile grew large she started prepare herself and got on all fours waiting for her boss's signal. And she didn't have to wait long since Shadow just said, "Leave none alive," and with that the first one to shoot off towards the priest was Delta. Kicking off, she sent sand flying everywhere as she went on a full sprint, and when she arrived in front of the priest she used her claws and swiped them across his face and chest, disfiguring him. She then used him as a springboard and shot off towards the next priest and sent a magic-enhanced punch right to the head, but he managed to block it with a sword. Although the priest managed to block it, he was sent flying and crashing onto other priests. While Delta was having her brawl, Epsilon and Beta started running in sync as their main focus for fighting is technique and precision with careful movements. They maneuvered around many priests that tried to swing at them, and when one priest attacked them, one would block it, while the other one went for the kill, and all of that was possible due to their flawless teamwork. Meanwhile, Gamma was spinning around in circles with a sword in hand while making noise with her mouth. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Shadow, watching her, just turned his head to the side and covered his mouth with his hands to stop himself from laughing out loud. "I can't believe she actually did it. This is so funny. I feel kinda bad for lying about it, but looking at the scene is all worth it." Although surprisingly the technique works for her as none of the priests are able to get too close to her, that is until her foot slipped on the sand, causing the sword to slip out of her hand as she falls to the sand, eating a mouthful. As for the sword she threw, thanks to her spinning, the momentum carried itself onto the sword, turning it into a spinning blade, which due to her fall Delta threw it at an angle and into the neck of a priest, but it wasn't the only one. Due to the way they were lined up, Gamma's sword decapitated 5 priests in one good arc, until a priest saw what was coming and redirected the spinning blade to the ground, where it stayed there for a bit before turning back into slime. Everyone just stopped what they were doing and slowly turned their heads to Gamma, who was getting up from the floor spitting everywhere. "Tui tui eo tui I got san ento my mouth." Translation: "Eo, I got sand into my mouth," said Gamma, trying to spit out all the sand with a sour expression on her face and her tongue sticking out. Everyone from Shadow Garden just sighs and face palms, thinking that Gamma actually got better during battle, but got disappointed to see that it was just one of her clumsy mistakes. Alpha then picks the fight back up to where they left off. Alpha started enhancing herself with magical energy to the point where it even started to manifest into the real world. A blue type of magic power starts to come out of her and enveloped her whole body. She then disappeared from everyone's view and 10 priests suddenly collapsed with their head in the air and blood gushing from their necks. Once Alpha was done, only a few priests remained and they all trembled in fear and started running all over the place and into the forest to hide. Seeing them running away, the others were about to give chase but their master Shadow stopped them. "Girls, wait, let me take care of them." Hearing him, the girls grew excited as they were about to see their master in action. Since every time their master does something they know it's a spectacle to see. Clouds then soon started to form even though the sun just started rising, the wind was growing fierce, even Lilim had to hold her brother tightly. All you could see was Shadow's coat flapping fiercely with the wind. Lightning then started swimming in the clouds, jumping around fiercely as if waiting for their command. Rumble rumble. Even though you couldn't see Shadow's face, you could see his eyes that were glowing a deep purple color, with electricity pulsing through them. He then spoke in a voice unfit of his age and stature. "These lowly creatures should really know their place." Rumble rumble rumble. Thunder was soon heard alongside the sound of lightning crackling. He nonchalantly held up 2 fingers and then nonchalantly made a dropping motion with no expression on his face. As if finally seeing their signal, lightning started falling from the sky all over the forest and onto the bodies of all the leftover priests that ran away. After each lightning strike, the sound of anguish soon followed. Kaboom aarrrrggggghhh, kaboom aarrrrggggghhh, kaboom aarrrrggggghhh, kaboom aarrrrggggghhh. 5. The girls just had an expression of awe look on their face. No matter how many times they see it, they just couldn't get enough of it. Beta then softly whispered, "It's like he's commanding the heavens themselves to smite these heretics for committing such a blasphemy against Master." The other girls could only nod as they were still fixated on his power. Not even Lilim was spared as she had a fanatical worship in her eyes towards the one that saved her and her only family member left in this world. Once the lightning stopped dropping and the screaming stopped, the clouds started to dissipate and the morning sun came shining through. Author's note: just the two of us. I see the raindrop crystal fall and the beauty of it all. LOL, the song came to mind when I wrote the last part. 25, Chapter 25. Omni POV. Seeing that everything was over, Shadow then turned around and knelt down towards Lilim, who was looking at the head of her mother and father. He then conjured some water and started to wash her hair and dry it with hot winds. He also conjured, cleaning it up from the blood of the priest's hand that was smothered on top of her head. He then patted her head and said, "There you go, good as new, although you could still use some cleaning. It's best to wait until we finish everything." As for her little brother, her brother was fast asleep in her arms. "So want to talk with your parents?" Lilim, who was touching the part of her head he was petting and blushing, stopped what she was doing and looked at him in shock, unsure of what he meant. Shadow, while looking at her who was just looking at him in shock, just said, "Imma, take that as a yes." He then stood up and looked at the head of her parents, and as he looked down he said, "Come forth," leaving out the "and serve" for obvious reasons. And as he did, 2 shadowy beings started to manifest itself. They were Lilim's mother and father. The girls, seeing her parents once again, just broke down crying once more. The shadow beings then turned their head towards Shadow and with just a look asked for permission to be allowed to hug her. Shadow just nodded his head, and as he did they both went and wrapped their arms around her. "We're both glad you're both safe," said the mother, looking at her and the baby. The father then turned towards Shadow and bowed his head, "Thank you for saving her." Lilim then, while crying, said, "You were right, father, there was someone who could cure my demon possession in the east. They came across the sea, they were the mission." The father then turned and looked at Shadow in shock and said, "Did you come from the Midgard kingdom?" Shadow just slowly nodded carefully in case he said something that would expose himself. That was until he realized that there was no one there alive, except the unconscious pedos still looking as miserable as ever. Seeing Shadow nod, the father nodded as well. "I see, so we completed the mission, that's good." The father then turned to Lilim and said in a caring voice, "Make sure to take care of yourself, alright, and grow big and strong. I just know you have a lot of talent, so you could do it." Then the mother chimed in, "Grow up to be happy in life and find yourself a good husband that would take good care of you." And as the mother said this, she started hinting at Shadow with her head and ears. Lilim then asked softly, "You guys aren't going to stay?" The father then sighed and said, "We have already died once, and we died a warrior's death, a death that we could be proud of. We died protecting the people we love. If we asked to be resurrected, we feel it would be spitting on our sacrifice. We wanted our death to mean something, and it does. Our death meant that you and your little brother could survive another day. And I couldn't ask for anything better." Then the mother spoke, "We already did our roles in this life. We made sure you would survive and meet him." The mother then pointed towards Shadow, and as she did she spoke to him. "Please take care of our little girl when we finally pass on, and thank you, truly thank you for letting us have a final goodbye." Shadow just nodded, promising her that he will. Lilim tried to refuse and make counter-arguments about why they should stay, but the words wouldn't come out. She realized that they wanted to move on but couldn't until they made sure she's safe. And so she took a deep breath to calm herself down and with a big smile said, "Don't worry, I could take care of myself. So you could move on and live a happy life in the afterlife. And don't worry about my little brother, I promise to take good care of him." She kept listing off the things she would do with a smile to reassure her parents. which worked as they smiled and held each other's hand. And as they held hands they turned towards Shadow and said, "Please let us pass on, our time is already up." Shadow just nodded once again and dispelled his powers, letting them move on. And as they slowly dissipated, Lilim kept making them promises until they were truly gone. Once she realized that they were truly gone, she was sad, but not as sad as she was before. She had her closure. She now knows that they are together in the afterlife, and it's all thanks to Shadow. Lilim then turned and bowed down towards Shadow. Thank you for bringing me closure and letting me say my final goodbye to my parents." Shadow nodded once again, accepting her thanks, and then said, "Now then, on to other matters. How would you like to join Shadow Garden?" Lilim then repeated the name, Shadow Garden. Shadow then signaled to Alpha, which prompted her to say, "We Shadow Garden go against a cult, the Diabolos cult to be more precise." And with that she started her whole ordeal and the introductory into Shadow Garden. And when she finished, Lilim could be seen biting her lip with an enraged expression. Even though she was glad that her parents passed on, that didn't mean she would forgive the perpetrator. When she heard everything she bowed down towards Shadow and said, "Please make me powerful, I want to fight, I want to completely destroy the cult," and with that she has awakened her hunger for power. Shadow then smiled and said, "Isn't that a given? How about this? I'll let this bug alive. You would have to hunt him down in the future when you're powerful enough and get revenge on your own," while pointing his finger towards Pedos. Lilim then looked at his eyes with a power-hungry look and nodded his head. "Please let me be the one to hunt him down and be his executioner. From now on, Lilim is a name you thrown away and it's in the past. From now on you shall be named Zeta, the 6th member to have officially joined Shadow Garden." Lilim, who now goes by Zeta, got in one knee and said, "Thank you, master." And as she knelt down, Shadow used ruler's authority to bring her baby brother into his arms, and as he landed into his arms, he surrounded Zeta with slime until the body suit everyone wears formed on her body. And with that, Zeta has officially joined Shadow Garden.
Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.